Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3. The game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
How about them Predators last night?
Rolling.
I mean, I tell you what, the way I have built my week, I'll let you into, kind of how I'm going to be on late on Sirius on Thursday and Friday, so I have to do what I call, kind of stretch myself out because I'm going to be on until midnight. And so what I did was I went to the game for the first two periods, then I went home, and I got on the elliptical for an hour at 9 o'clock. Because, again, I'm going to be on till midnight, so I'm trying to condition myself to be, do the 4 hours of this wonderful program, and then stay up until midnight talking about the Dallas Cowboys in the Pac-12 championship game. So I'm, trying to get there. So overtime starts, and I think I had like 8 more minutes to go. And overtime starts, and I'm like, all right, give me 5 minutes and a shootout, and I will be off this baby by the time that – and then Forsberg scores 5 seconds into overtime or whatever. What was it, 14 seconds? He scores into overtime. And so, it was like, oh, well, there you go. So we will get to them at 3 o'clock because, again, I gave up on the season, and since then, they have not lost a game. So we'll get to them at 3 o'clock. But I want to start with the daily soap opera that is the Days of Our Titans, where every day it's another story. It's drama here. It's gossip there. Chris Sanders is the one who is going to join us later this hour, but he compared it to a soap opera the other day. And I thought to myself, we didn't have this with John Robinson, did we? Right? Like this just feels different. Every day it's this reporter said this, and this is probably coming from this guy, and then that reporter said this, and well, that's probably coming from that team, and this came from ownership, and this. And I'm like, this is all very new for me. Now, I'm fine with it because it's drama, it's tea, it's gossip, and I like those things, but man, this is just different than what I'm used to from the Titans. I used to be jealous of the other cities that would be able to do this every day on the radio. So this morning, in what is Cannot Miss Radio at 8 o'clock on Wednesdays when Paul Kaharski joins Robbie and Joe, PK was in rare form today, and he was letting it fly. First, on the Titans, and the way the Titans have kind of changed the way they're doing business behind the scenes.
What they can say.
Right.
I mean, it's clear that people within the Titans have their national people that they go to. They think we're idiots that we can't conclude it. And they say, no, the agent. I mean, look, you say what you want. I've been, in the business since 96. I know how NFL media works. And I can tell often when it's the agent, and I can tell often when it's you. And now they're playing games with national media.
Yeah. So you're talking about the Robinson's approach. Robinson was very much not a give thing to anybody guy.
Robinson, Webster, Reinfeldt, Reese.
Going back before that. Okay.
In the entire existence of the Tennessee Titans, they didn't play the national media game. Fisher didn't. Munchak didn't. Malarkey didn't.
I mean, he's telling you this is new. Like where it's okay, well, Diana has this report today, and the Ian Rappaport has this report there, and they're saying this in Boston, and they're playing a new game now. This is not what the Titans normally do. And then he decided, let's just tear down the curtain. Here's Rand Carthon. Paul's take on him.
I'm in trouble for having suggested that Rand Carthon talks to Ian Rappaport.
You're in trouble?
I've gotten in trouble for that.
With who?
Stillman document. With Rand Carthon.
He ground you?
Oh, we had a bad exchange about it in Minnesota. I mean, look, I'm not the person that came up to me at the Combine and said, oh, Rand Carthon is the greatest person in the history of the world. He knows my kids' names. I love him. That was Ian Rappaport.
Glad to know that wasn't you saying that to you.
I mean, so Rand's mad at me about my indications about his relationship with Rappaport. Well, Rappaport probably shouldn't run around boasting about how great Rand's been to him. Is that my fault or is that Ian's fault? Rand should talk to Ian and say, hey, why don't you tone down the fact that I've been good to you instead of running around the Combine doing cartwheels telling everybody how great I've been to you.
Okay. So now when you hear that, does it not make sense that when the Ian Rappaport report that Will Levis was going to be starting against the Falcons came out and Vrabel got mad that Vrabel thought it was Rand Carthon? When I told you when that happened, I'm like, I saw Paul go to Rand Carthon in Minnesota and accuse him after the Burks injury came from Rappaport, and Rand got mad. Like, I saw the whole thing. Well, I didn't know this. I didn't know that Ian Rappaport was parading around at the combine saying, Rand Carthon's the best. He knows my kids' names. He's a this, he's a that. I mean, I didn't know that. So now that makes putting that together pretty easy. And then, of course, as Paul documents, we all know where Vrabel takes his tea.
Mike talks to Diana. I think everybody knows that to some degree.
I will interrupt real quick because I've actually asked this aloud. And again, go back to when Diana wasn't at The Athletic, she was at ESPN. How do we know that? Like, how is that known? Like, is everybody says that as fact, but I know the draft night, right, there was the stuff with Stroud, and she was here reporting for ESPN. But, like, is there something I'm also forgetting with that where, like, that was made clear?
If you just retrace, like, what she has and when she has it and what the simple lines are, I don't think there's much work done to disguise.
I mean, in fact, Diana came up to me in Minnesota, and I was like, Diana, like, we talk about how you're the source for Vrabel. And I'm not going to tell you what she said, but she didn't deny it. So, again, and I think we kind of all knew that. So here you go. The Titans are playing the media game now, which Paul says they've never played. He's telling you about Ian Rappaport. He's telling you about Diana. And I'm a little surprised by it that Paul was just letting it fly this morning. I mean, he was 95 right down the dish. But this happens for one of two reasons. There are two reasons, one of two, that the Titans have turned into a franchise that zip it up, didn't say anything, and is now playing the who said what game. The first reason is because the team sucks. That is the number one reason. So nobody cares about what do they have to do in order to beat the Colts, because as much as I'll go to the game Sunday and I want them to win on Sunday and I want Will Levis to play well on Sunday, a win against the Colts doesn't mean anything. According to the New York Times playoff machine, the Titans have exactly a 1% chance of making the playoffs. And in order to have anything better than a 25% chance of making the playoffs, they have to win out the rest of the season. So they're not going to make the playoffs. And I think we know, okay, these games are now just games. They're just there. You know, and we're not used to that. You know, you got to go back to 2015 when the season was this meaningless at this point. So I think that's the first part. The other part about them stinking and this turning into a who said what kind of game is that, as I predicted when they hired the commission of Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon, and they didn't give one guy more power than the other, that this was ultimately going to turn into a, I didn't want Andre Dillard, he wanted Andre Dillard. And while those aren't the exact words that are being said, I think when you see Greg Bedard saying, Vrabel wants out of Tennessee because he didn't know Rand. It was a shotgun marriage. He doesn't have a relationship with Rand. He does. You see, like, it kind of tracks. So that's the first reason. The second reason is this. The second reason that we're playing this game with the Titans, as to who said what, who means what, who's telling the truth, who's lying, is because the Titans are almost never truthful anymore about anything. Let's start with the owner. Remember when the owner released a statement saying Mike Mularkey was the coach and was going to be the coach going forward, only to fire him 8 days later? Remember when the owner signed John Robinson to a multi-year contract extension saying, I want Mike and John to be together forever? And then all of a sudden fires him in the middle of the season with them in first place and takes 4 days to answer a question about it? So when it comes to telling us what's what, they almost never do it. And then when they do it, it's like there are more questions with what they said than answers. Vrabel gets up at the podium, answers questions. How often do we sit there and think to ourselves that Vrabel's actually telling us the truth? Rand Carthon got up there and talked about the KB pay cut situation and everything was fine and KB's a pro's pro, and then KB took the pay cut and he did it, and thank God he did that for our team, for DeAndre Hopkins. That's where then he ships him off for a bag of footballs and is not willing to talk about it. So these guys never talk to us, and when they do talk to us, as we've seen with the owner, as we've seen with the coach, as we've seen with the GM, most of the time it's not even true. And sometimes when it is true, it's like, oh, wow, they really were telling the truth. Now compare that to Barry Trotz. Do we ever play that game with him? No, because Barry Trotz is accountable every day. And yes, you'll probably say, well, of course you're saying that about Barry Trotz because Barry Trotz comes on your show every week. But have you listened to Barry Trotz? I mean, yesterday I'm sitting there, why'd you send that guy down? And he tells us, it's a business decision. Got it. So you've got all these defensemen that don't have AHL contracts. You've got this one defenseman that does. So you send the one guy down that you can because you're working through some business. You might trade somebody. You might release somebody. You might to open a spot to bring him back. Makes sense to me. Have you ever thought Barry Trotz is lying to you? I don't think I've ever thought that. Barry does press conferences whenever there's a big news item. Barry Trotz is accountable. Nobody is going to go looking to try to snoop into what's going on with the Predators because almost everybody feels like they know. And when it comes to the Titans, they can't get their story straight because who knows who's in charge over there, and nobody is in charge over there. And so now they're playing he said this game, and this might have been, I didn't say that. Why does everybody think it's me that's leaking to Ian Rappaport? TD came on the show that week of the Atlanta Falcons story about Will Levis, and TD was like, why does it have to be Ram? Why couldn't it be Chad Brinker? Why couldn't it be Anthony Robinson? Why couldn't it be Tim Kelly? Why couldn't it be somebody else? And then you hear Paul say, Ian Rappaport's running around in the combine saying, oh, Rand Carthon's the best. He knows my kids' names. And it only happens for one of two reasons. One, because you stink. And two, because this team is not trustworthy at all. And I understand that it's easy, right? Barry Trotz and the Predators, they're in the honeymoon phase. They can blame the last guy for everything. The team wasn't supposed to be very good. The team is better than we thought it was going to be at least, 2 weeks ago. But I can't ever envision that if things were bad, that Barry would shy away from it, that Andrew Burnett would shy away from it. I don't ever feel like, even with Laviolette, who never said anything, and Robinson's the same way, I never felt like those guys were actively lying, even though Robinson did lie to me about trading A.J. Brown. But that's why we're playing the who said what drama game. And that is the sign of an organization that has some serious cracks in the foundation. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to get us started. 615-737-1025. The second thing is, a lot of people are mad about that Greg Bedard report and then Greg Bedard's interview where he made the report look bad about Rand Carthon on the program. And I understand all of that. I do. I was stunned to hear what I heard out of Paul Karharski's mouth today about that. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025. If you want to weigh in on today's program, Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 through the game.
as far as, Rand's job performance, I mean, I asked people like, well, how come, why wouldn't that work? And, that's the feedback that I got back. I don't know him at all. I'm not going to get into specifics because it's not like I'm reporting a story on the Titans and, making allegations, but, there are things around the scout community, not anything major. I would say that it's mostly minor, but that, some people take issue with it.
Hey, that was Bedard on our show, Greg Bedard of the Boston Sports Journal, and that cut right there got everybody all worked up and bent out of shape that he would put in his piece that there were questions about Rand Carthon's job performance going back to his San Francisco days. And again, that was your answer of, there was some, talk about, just when you talk about and you hear, whatever it may be. And I said, like, hey man, if you're going to write that, I believe that you have to have a little something that is more than that. Like, I understand he's not going to get on there and say, well, I talked to Johnny Joseph, who is the executive scouting director for the Texans when he was in San Francisco, and he said, like, he's not going to do that. But regardless, what's happened is a lot of people are saying that was made up. Then there are a lot of us that are like, well, he probably didn't make it up, but it's probably not enough to be able to say. Like, I wouldn't feel comfortable saying with that of like, hey, here's the evidence that Rand was not good at his job. But then Paul this morning on Robbie and Retrode, Paul, it sounds like, and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, it sounds like he backed the Bedard report. Here was Koharski this morning on Robbie and Retrode.
But there's a nugget in what he reported. And what he should have said was, like, I reported what I reported, and I can't really discuss it further. And I'll say, like, I know that there's a nugget in what he reported, and I can't really discuss it further. I don't have it that I can report it. So I wouldn't be talking about it unless Bedard brought it up.
Okay, but let me stop you there. Because he had the Vrabel stuff.
I'm talking about the Carthon.
You're talking about the Carthon stuff. Okay.
So, I mean, you get what I'm saying. There's something about Carthon in San Francisco that's noteworthy.
Okay.
I don't know that it had a big bearing on his job performance, but in scouting circles, there was a thing. I don't have it reportable beyond that, and I wouldn't be talking about it unless Bedard brought it up.
Okay.
And then butchered it on your earway.
Okay. I mean, Ian, help me out here, but does that not sound like Paul is putting a hand up and saying, I back that?
Kinda.
I mean, this is what I'll say, and I have a pretty good idea. He's listening right now, so Paulie, if you hear this, just, I think you have to say what you know now. Like, if you're going to go that far, and you're basically on a report that a lot of people are upset about, again, I don't think Bedard's lying. Now, if you're going to do this, like, I need more evidence, right? Like, if you're going to say, hey, his job performance was bad even in the 49ers, well, how so? Well, when I talked to some scouts, what I heard was he did X, Y, Z. That's what I need to hear. He doesn't have to be, I talked to this guy or this particular, like, you don't have to go into details. You don't have to bust your source out there. But if you're going to go there, I think you have to go there. And if Koharski's going to go there, I think he has to go there, right? Like, I was driving in the car this morning. I heard that. I was like, wait a minute, what? I expected it. And what's funny is, people that have worked in the media for a long time, like Joe and Paul and people that have, the capital J journalists, they are kind of, I don't want to say on Bedard's side, but they look at Bedard's history and credibility and they're like, this guy doesn't just make stuff up. Okay. And then there's a lot of, now, I wouldn't say everybody's like that. In fact, I know not everybody is like that. Not every capital J journalist is like that. Just Joe and Paul are. Then there's some kind of newer media kind of stuff that's like, this report is ridiculous and he is making it up and I'm like, I don't believe that. But I'm not going to get on board with Carthon was bad at his job in the scouting circles at the 49ers because I don't know that. And if you're going to tell me that, like, I need some evidence to back it up in order for me to feel like, okay, well, then that's a thing that you hear and Bedard didn't have that. And now Paul's going on Robbie and Joe, and he's like, oh, no, I heard it. And it's like, wait a minute. Well, if you're going to say that, you got to tell us what you heard. Am I out of line, Ian, with that demand?
Maybe a little.
You think he doesn't have to say it?
Well, if he doesn't have enough to report it, he can't just go all willy-nilly.
I think that's probably fair.
And go Bedard on us.
I mean, but here's why. I think
if he
there
had
has
enough
be
to
some more
report
context.
something there, he would report it.
I think he would too. But here's why I think there has to be some more context, because you cannot unring the bell, right? So once Bedard says what he says, regardless of how reckless it may or may not have been, regardless of how true it may or may not have been, once he says it, you cannot unring that. And that is really unfair if what Bedard said was not accurate. But then once Paul says, oh, no, I've heard the same thing, but I'm not going to say what it was because I don't have enough of it to be able to co-sign on it, it's like,
do we know it was the exact same thing?
Sounded that way, didn't it?
Maybe something. I don't know if he said he had, I guess. I don't know if it was the exact same thing, but.
It sounded like he went back to the same bell that Bedard rang, and he rang it again. So if you're going to ring the bell, I would like to, I know that there are certain standards and everything else, but and I'm not going to say that this is about Rand or not about Rand, but I've heard things. I don't know how true they are or how true they aren't or whatever it may be, but it's like that was kind of, to me, like a hand in the air saying, I second it. And it's like, wait a minute. The people around here trust you. Even though you might be a little loud and obnoxious sometimes, the people around here do trust you. Not that I'm not loud or obnoxious, but still. Like, people trust you. So what are you telling me? 615-737-1025. Add that to the list. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Robert is in Nashville and has been waiting patiently. Go ahead, Robert.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call. Enjoying your show. Been a while since I called on your show.
I know. You know you're the best. You know you were Floyd's favorite caller, Robert.
Thank you. So, I mean, I'm listening to you and everything. I didn't get a chance to, listen to the interview on the radio about the Titans, but I just want to say this. The Titans have, to me, lost all their identity, all the respect of, people out here that has been a Titan fan, because nobody don't feel like that they can win. And so, I mean, with that being said, I mean, with all the identity, with everything don't happen and everything, I mean, it's time now for a coaching change. And, I'm going to say this, and I say, and I say it all the time, about that Mike Malarkin freak.
Mm-hmm.
It's time now for Mike Vrabel now to pack his stuff up and go with his partner, Ryan Tannehill. That's what it is.
Robert, can I ask you just quickly, for everybody out there, if you had to pick between Vrabel or Malarkey, who would you pick?
Oh my goodness! You know I wouldn't pick that Mike Malarkin freak.
You're the biggest Mike Malarkey hater I've ever met in my entire life.
No, absolutely not him. And then last but not least, I mean, I hope that the Titans, before they, build this stadium, think about building a team, because it won't be anybody in the stadium hardly to fill the seats if they don't build the team.
Robert,
so
I hear you.
Money they're gonna build a stadium and build a team.
I hear you. I completely agree with you on the building a team for the seats in the stadium, and it's always good to talk to you. Thank you for your call. I will say this: the fact that Robert is out on Vrabel is telling, because Robert hated Mike Malarkey from the very beginning, and he was so happy when they fired Mike Malarkey, and he worshipped at the altar of Mike Vrabel, and now he's out on Vrabel. That can't be a good sign. We have a response from Paul, by the way, Ian.
Okay, cool.
We'll do that next. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stone and Company on 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Hey, tomorrow it's your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the Preds game tomorrow night, you will win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Participate with Robbie and Rexroad tomorrow morning at 8:45 a.m. Preds Pick to Click is brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. That's my agent. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold. So, again, the Greg Bedard story that everybody has heard at the end said that there were questions about Rand Carthon's job performance going back to his days with the 49ers. We asked him to clarify. He didn't seem to really have much other than, well, you just hear something minor, some scouts, some this, some that. Again, it wasn't very detailed and explanatory, which made it look very not credible, is what I would say. So then today on Robbie and Rex Road, as we played in the last segment, but if you didn't hear it, Paul Kaharski said this.
But there's a nugget in what he reported. And what he should have said was, like, I reported what I reported, and I can't really discuss it further. And I'll say, like, I know that there's a nugget in what he reported, and I can't really discuss it further. I don't have it that I can report it. So I wouldn't be talking about it unless Bedard brought it up.
Okay, but let me stop you there, because he had the Vrabel stuff.
I'm talking about the Carthon.
You're talking about the Carthon stuff. Okay.
So I mean you get what I'm saying. There's something about Carthon in San Francisco that's noteworthy.
Okay.
I don't know that it had a big bearing on his job performance, but in scouting circles, there was a thing. I don't have it reportable beyond that, and I wouldn't be talking about it unless Bedard brought it up.
Okay. Okay.
And then butchered it on your airway.
Okay, so I interpreted that as Paul raising his hand saying, I heard it. PK has responded. Texted me and said, I said all I can say. I don't have it reportable. You, talking about me, you don't dictate where I can go. I love it. I can hear Paul saying that. Journalism dictates. Sourcing dictates. You can use that. Play the cut again if you need, which, again, we just did. Said, I don't know if it impacted his work. I did not re-ring the bell. It sucks that it is vague, and my other choice was to say nothing when I know a bit. That's from PK. Now, I was saying this to Ian during the break. Sean texts into the text line, our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com, and says, you're 100% right that all this gossip is because the team stinks. But, man, I miss the days when everyone just talked football. And another person responded into the text line and said, this is Kyle in Shelbyville. PK probably got the info somewhere, but it hurts to me, but now I have to believe the Boston Globe report. Well, I think he's talking about this Boston Sports Journal report there. But, again, that's the point when I'm like, when you're like, now I have a nugget, but I can't report it. It's like, I feel like he's ringing the bell, but he says he's not ringing the bell. So I guess that's for you to determine. I said this to Ian during the break. Now, I'm not complaining about this because, to me, you guys know I go down some rabbit holes every now and then. But, man, this is all bullcrap. Like, this is all just drama and gossip and, like, and Katie Reese, Floyd's daughter-in-law, texted me, unprompted, and said Floyd would absolutely hate this. He would be disgusted at all this he said, she said in the media. It's absolutely ridiculous and embarrassing. Let me just say this. I don't like doing the whole Floyd would have thought this. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. And, Ian, I think you can kind of speak to this, too. Like, Floyd would be furious right now.
He would not enjoy that. No.
He would not enjoy this at all. Like, and even just the Kaharski thing right there, not that Paul's right or wrong, but just like he would have gone nuts after the fact about what Bedard said about the Carthon thing. And then even Paul, again, kind of saying, I can't report it because I don't have enough on it to report. And if he didn't say it, I wouldn't say that I've kind of heard some of the same things. Like, I think Floyd probably would have gone nuts on that too. I mean, I think he'd be, and honestly, it is embarrassing. And it's because the team's bad. Like, that's what this all boils down to. If the team was good, then there wouldn't be need to talk to people and to say, oh, well, Vrabel wants out of here, and the reason he wants out of here is because he doesn't like Rand Carthon. Because he wouldn't want out of here if they were in first place. And if he did want out of here because they were in first place, then you got real problems. I mean, you have real problems now. You don't have a tackle, but yes. Randy texts in and says, Jared, stop it. Paul doesn't have to share anything. If it was newsworthy, it would have been out there. You just want in on the gossip, and you're feeling left out. If you really want to know, Randy says, do your own investigating. It'll be okay. You don't have to know everything. Again, I'm not mad about what I don't know or what I do know. And I even said it to Bedard when I asked him the question about what he said about Rand, which was when Rand got hired from San Francisco, I didn't know Rand from a jar of Vicks. So how would I know what happened in San Francisco? I have people that tell me on Twitter and the text line, and they say, oh, Rand's all responsible for all these players that the 49ers have drafted. Rand is responsible for Brock Purdy. So I'm supposed to believe that Rand Carthon is responsible for Kyle Shanahan, a quarterback guru, finding his franchise quarterback in the 7th round. And all the credit goes to Rand Carthon, and that Shanahan and, his coaching quarterback guru group that's been there all the years, the Slowicks, the McDaniels, now it's Brian Greasy. Like, you're telling me that it was Rand that found Brock Purdy. I have a hard time believing that. But I also don't blame Rand for drafting Trey Lance. But I don't know. And in all of this, I don't know either. I'm just reading the tea leaves here. And it's like, if it was newsworthy, it would be out. Things don't come out because they're newsworthy. Things come out for one of two reasons. Either they come out because they want it out, or it comes out because somebody can't keep their mouth shut. That's the two reasons why things come out. Texter and the text line says, how did the Titans go from the coaches and fans having decent expectations for the season to being terrible and then just blaming J-Rob? If they were successful, no way John Robinson would be getting any credit. It is a two-way street. So it is in reality a two-way street, but also the easiest thing to do in the NFL is to always blame the last guy for your problems. And that is whether it's John Robinson, whether it's always easy, right? Like Rustin Webster doesn't get any credit for how John Robinson turned the Titans around in 2016 and 17. Then again, I guess neither did Mike Mularkey, and he was coaching them, and he got fired. So, I mean, that is just kind of reality. I mean, I think what the Titans did this offseason was atrocious. And I think you guys, and it's not your fault, I get very disappointed when I hear people say, well, but they had limited cap money. I'm like, you do realize, and I looked it up today, Ryan Tannehill has the number one base salary amongst quarterbacks in the NFL. Now, Ryan Tannehill makes the 15th most cash at the position this year. Guys like Lamar and Burrow and Hurts and Herbert and Mahomes and all those guys make more money than Tannehill, and you know that. But Tannehill has the highest base salary. Why? Because the Titans didn't rework his contract. All of those teams reworked everybody else's contract. That creates cap space. If you wanted to rework Tannehill's contract, you could rework Tannehill's contract. But you didn't want to. So you didn't. So it wasn't the cap. But what's happened is a lot of people are like, oh, well, they didn't have the cap, so that's why they had to go bargain shopping, and that still doesn't explain why they gave Andre Dillard $10 million guaranteed. Donovan Smith's playing for the Chiefs at $3 million. That doesn't make up for that. They did a horrible job this offseason. A team that is rebuilding, at least it now looks like they're rebuilding because they did just trade away one of their best defensive players, and they drafted a guard with the 11th overall pick in the draft. I looked this up today, speaking of guard. Ian, do you know who the highest paid quarterback in the NFL is?
Is it just, you talking straight money?
Yep.
Daniel Jones.
Joe Burrow. Do you know who the highest paid receiver is?
I do not.
Tyreek Hill. Do you know who the highest paid running back is?
No.
Christian McCaffrey. Now let's just use those three players. Does Cincinnati win because of Joe Burrow? Yes. Does Miami win because of Tyreek Hill? Yes. Does San Francisco win because of Christian McCaffrey? Yes. Now, they got a lot of guys over there. Highest paid edge rusher, Nick Bosa? Yes. Do the Atlanta Falcons win games because they have the highest paid guard, Chris Lindstrom? Do you even know who that is? Did you even know that that was the highest paid guard? So, long story short, I think the offseason has been atrocious. And again, people make excuses as to why that was, but I just thought they did a horrendous job of evaluating talent in their roster. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Chris Sanders will join us up next on the program. He's the one who called it a soap opera on Sunday. What does he think now? Stillman and Company. Speaking of Chris Sanders, a reminder to join me, him, and D. Mace live at Teddy's Tavern this Sunday from 9:30 to 11:30 for the award-winning pregame show before the Titans and the Colts. The award-winning pregame show is award-winning and presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment and The Beast Unleashed. This Friday, Robbie and Rexroad will be broadcasting live for the grand opening of a new Dunkin' location in Franklin at 1441 New Highway 96 West. 1025, the game will be on site from 6 to 9, so stop by and have your chance to win lots of great prizes. Chris Sanders on the pregame show was the first to say the current state of the Tennessee Titans is like a soap opera. So with that, Chris, your thought on this week's edition of Days of Our Titans?
Man, I don't know. I know what this Ryan Carthon and Mike Vrabel stuff is crazy. But to talk about the game, man, the game was just kind of – I left the game kind of feeling like confused. I mean, I kind of feel like Will Levis after the game. He made a quote in saying, we won, but it felt like we lost. Even though the Tennessee Titans won, it didn't feel like it was the victory. It was kind of like we were mustering up like to feel something, but in actuality, they got to win. So I'm happy about that.
Chris, what do you make of all the drama?
Oh, man, it's ridiculous, man. I listened to the show yesterday, and it was talking about this, Rand Carthon, and the speculation. It's just like what you said. It's kind of like Days of Our Lives. We don't know who's telling the truth, what's going on, but at the end of the day, they're going to have to figure this thing out real quick.
Do you think that all of this drama about, this person might have said that or that person might have said this, or do you think that is festering or living inside of that facility right now, or do you think it's all that's just playground bull crap that they're talking about on the radio and writing in newspapers?
Yeah, it is, because when we're playing football, we're in the locker rooms. We're not really thinking about when situations happen like that in the front office or outside of what's in the locker room, we don't really discuss that. We're just kind of like, man, what the heck is going on? I mean, just like with the Jeff Fisher and the Floyd Reese, the situation that went on with that, we actually didn't know that was going on until after the season was over. So with all this stuff with Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel, and he said this and they said this, and, the Patriots that, the Ohio State this, in that locker room, guys are really not thinking about it out there. They're just figuring out a way to try to get a win. I know there's a lot of coach talk, but in actuality, that's actually what goes on in the locker room.
Do you think internally at the higher levels of the organization that things are this bad, or do you think we're just making a big deal about nothing?
I don't know if it's making a big deal, because I think sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, I know stuff was said, but you really don't know if it's credible or not. You don't know who's telling the truth, if they said this or they said that, or they're saying the truth or they're lying. But at the end of the day, man, they just got to figure out a way to try to get back in this playoff race and try to win some games, because we can focus on all that and, focus on, well, Rand Carthon can't do this or Vrabel can't do that or this coach. I mean, all that stuff is nonsense. If you win some games, I think it would eliminate a lot of the distraction, but it really shows its ugly head because you're 4-7.
So you brought up the get back in the playoff race. I think that's over, right? In order to, according to the New York Times playoff predictor, they have to win every game to give themselves a chance to make the playoffs. If they win every game, they've got an 86% chance of being a wild card. If they lose a game, they've got like a 20% chance to make it to the playoffs. They're not going to go on the road and beat Miami. They're not going to beat the Texans twice. They're probably not going to beat Jacksonville again. It's over, Chris.
Hey, Mr. Positive Pete, man, I'm trying to think of something positive to say, and I really can't, because of what you just said. And I'll never, discredit a man and say you can't do the impossible. But when you look at this this whole team overall, I mean, you got a struggling offensive line, you got a defense that plays good at home but not on the road, and then you got inconsistent wide receivers, and then you got a situation in the secondary where you consistently, giving up plays, and you're consistently getting pass interference, you're consistently, doing the wrong thing in the secondary. That's the reason why I can't really say anything positive, because there's so many things that is wrong with this situation with this team.
I was just thinking off the top of my head as you were talking, even though they won on Sunday, I right now, other than the quarterback, cannot think of any, and I didn't think the quarterback was very good on Sunday.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
I cannot think of one positive thing about the football team right now, right? So the defensive line was active, but
right.
Did you see that Panther offensive line? They're worse than your offensive line.
Hey, me and you could have played guard. You could have played center.
This guy they drafted in the first round a couple years ago, Aquanu, the sixth overall pick, the left tackle. Dennis Daly's better than that guy. We could have rushed the passer against that guy. So, Arden Key got a couple of sacks. Congratulations. That guy sucks. So, what am I supposed to be positive about right now?
And I say this in a respectful way. I know I'm making a joke, but there's about 6 or 7 Dillards on the offensive line. I mean, it really, it was. I mean, and I'm being funny, but I'm being realistic. But when you look at that offensive line, I mean, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I couldn't believe the technique. They were big, but their technique was back. They were communicating. It was kind of like you were looking at a team that was saying, I'm ready to go fishing. I'm ready to go sit on my boat and relax. There was no enthusiasm. There was no excitement. There was no punch at the line of scrimmage. It was an offensive line that's just like, what in the Sam E. Hill are we doing out here? And that's why Arden Key got a sack.
Chris Sanders is with us. What do you make about the current on-field state of the Titans? Do you see some positives in there, or is it just,
I do see some positives, and the only positive I could really say is, number one, Will Levis. Will Levis, I know he played terrible last week, but that's a bright spot on offense. And then you got Derrick Henry that got back in the running game. I know he didn't get 100 yards. It's the third time he hasn't got 100 yards. But then you have a defense that the defense is doing pretty good. You got Arden Key who showed up. You got Archery that showed up. You got 2 sacks. You got Simmons that played well, been physical at the line of scrimmage. Those are the only and the kicker, Stonehouse. Those are the positive things that you can kind of build on. But at the end of the day, if you're going to win in this game, you got to be a complete team. And right now, I'm just saying, right now, they don't have a complete team. I'm not saying it can happen. But I think later on, if they add some pieces on the offensive line, add some pieces in the secondary, I think they can get back to their winning ways.
Do you think that this group can coexist together after the offseason we saw and the season we've seen? And do you think that this Carthon-Vrabel thing can really work to find a solution?
I think they can. I mean, at the end of the day, you got 2 grown men, and you got 2 grown men that want to win. You got 2 grown men that want to try to figure this thing out. But I think for it to work, and I'm not saying it's the situation, and Derek said this before. He said this. He said, when you come into the building, you got to leave your pride outside and come in and do what's best for the team. And I'm not saying that they're prideful. I'm not saying that they're mad at you. I'm not saying it because I don't know. But if they can do that and come together as a unit and put together some pieces on this offensive line, put together some pieces at the wide receiver position, put some pieces in the secondary that can be some good corners, then I think you can make something happen. But at the end of the day, if you don't come together as a team as opposed to individuals, then you're going to see the same thing happen next year.
I think they're too busy drafting guards, Chris Sanders. I mean, I think that's the – they need to go get a punt returner. They'll draft him in the first round, and then they'll go get a water boy in the second round.
Okay, but what do you do? Everybody was screaming. Okay, everybody was screaming that they got to fix the offensive line. But then you go get an offensive line guy, then now everybody's mad. And then what happens if you go get a receiver at the 11th pick, but then you don't have an offensive line? You're going to have a good receiver, but the quarterback's going to get his teeth kicked in. So, how do we handle that?
Well, I mean, again, I just wouldn't draft a guard. You want to draft a tackle with the 11th overall pick, that's a different discussion. What's crazy is that they did draft a tackle, and they've just decided to play him at guard. I mean, I can't totally explain it one way or another. Last one for you. Yes. Every single week you pick the Titans to win. Even this past week, you picked the Titans to win, and you were right by the skin of your teeth in what was a truly horrendous game for all of us to watch. Are you going to pick the Titans this week against the Colts? Titans haven't lost at home. Colts aren't anything special. But I think the Colts are probably, pound for pound, a better football team now than the Titans. Are you going to pick the Titans on Sunday?
1,000%. I'm going with the Tennessee Titans. The reason why I'm going 1,000 squared is because every time at home, they're a different ball club. If this was on the road and they played them in Indianapolis, I would say the Tennessee Titans will get blown out. But when they play at home, they're just a different team, different attitude, a different focus, a different mentality. So they're going to come in. The Indianapolis Colts are going to come in with the running back out. Taylor's out this week. You got Zach Moss. Yeah, he had 165 yards against them last time. But if the defense plays well and gets after Gardner Minshew and have him throw some interceptions, and the back end can cover for just 1 second and a half, let's go get this dub. Tennessee Titans, 1,000.737%. The Titans going to win.
There you go, Chris Sanders. We will see you on Sunday at the pregame show.
Sir. Appreciate you, Doc. Love you, mate.
Yep, love you too. Chris Sanders joining us on the program, as he always does, with the positive holiday cheer. By the way, somebody texted into the text line. I feel the need to address this. Text into the text line and said, Jared, you took the bait on Arden Key harder than anyone. You are a Mr. Preseason Pro Bowler. Let me say this. 2 things about the preseason. Number 1, after the third practice, I called my dad. I got in the car after practice, called my dad, and I said, this offensive line is horrible. They hadn't worn pads yet. They were all making excuses. And on the third day, I knew this line was terrible. That's first thing. Secondly, it's going to be hard for me in August during training camp to talk about what's going on there because I did take the bait during training camp. So what's going to happen is this upcoming training camp, somebody's going to tell me, Traylon Burks looks phenomenal. And I'll be like, okay, fine. Call me in September. So I am learning the error of my ways. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. How about them Predators? And what happened last night? 6 in a row. Ever since I gave up on the season, they haven't lost. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Here is Forsberg rushing the puck in. Forsberg scores! Well, that was quick. This place is going crazy. Philip Forsberg scores in overtime.
There you go, Predators 6 in a row. How about them Predators? I gave up on the season. I did, and I'm okay with giving up on the season because I understood why I was giving up when I was giving up. The Predators started off playing a little 500 hockey to begin the year. They go out on the CMA road trip. They lose the first two. Okay, it was tough. They win the third against Edmonton. They beat the crap out of Edmonton, who had come in here normally, as they normally do, beat the daylights out of the Predators. Predators went to Edmonton, beat them. Then they have two more games on the road trip. I'm like, gotta, get these two and then spin yourself out. Then they lose the one. All right, win this one. You're 2-3 on the road trip. Come on back home. You got Arizona. They're not that good. You got Calgary. They're not that good. And, Anaheim, who is terrible. You've got those teams and go from there and you should be okay. And then they have a 2-goal lead against Arizona. They lose. They have a 2-goal lead against Anaheim. They lose. And at that point, Money Puck gave them like a 10% chance of making the playoffs. And I saw those games, and I saw them fall apart in those games, and I just, that's it. But I wasn't going to get mad about it. Like, I'm mad about the Titans this year. Titans suck, and I'm mad about it. But I wasn't going to get mad because I wanted a new coach. I wanted a new general manager. I got the new coach I believe in. I got the new general manager I believe in. And so the last thing I'm going to do, and I've been saying for years, give it up, tear it down. The last thing I'm going to do is sit there when they are reaping the unfortunate rewards of what happens when you tear it down and say, how dare you lose, when, again, this is kind of what we had been asking them to do. So I was okay with it, but I'm also a realist. And I know that if you can't beat Arizona with a 2-goal lead at home and you dig a huge hole for yourself at the beginning of the year, chances are you're probably not getting out of it. I knew that, this is a new system with a new coach, and Hal had said, it is taking them some time to adjust. And I just said, well, it is what it is. Let's embrace the tank. Let's see what good player they'll be able to draft in the first round this year and hopefully add him to the kitty, and there we go. And they have not lost since. They have not lost a game since then. They had an off day. They got back from the CMA road trip. They lost on Saturday. They lost on Tuesday. They had the off day on Thursday. They squeaked by a terrible Chicago team, the second worst team in the Western Conference. They squeaked by Chicago on Saturday. They had the unbelievable comeback against the Avalanche on Tuesday, and all of a sudden they were off. And now I'm afraid to get back on the bandwagon because I feel like if I do, Ian, have you noticed how this season has gone? They start off the season, I don't have high expectations. I just kind of hope. Then after the first couple games, remember, I was impressed.
You almost guaranteed the playoffs.
I almost guaranteed the playoffs. And what happened when I started flirting with guaranteeing the playoffs?
You flushed them down the toilet.
They went right into the crapper. Then what happened when I gave up?
They've won 6 in a row.
So it would not be right for me to get back on the bandwagon right now.
Only if you want to destroy it.
And it's not even like, the superstitious idea of, well, now you're back on and, now because you got back on, they're going to lose. It's just, I don't want to get too excited in the middle of November. I don't want to get too excited because what I'm seeing is exactly like what I had hoped for this offseason when they dumped Johansson and they dumped Duchesne, who I was sick and tired of waiting on. I was so tired of every year, well, if we can get Johansson to play well, if we can get Duchesne. I'm like, this has been 5 years. I'm tired of waiting on them. And so they dumped him and they get Ryan O'Reilly, who is a player that I have a lot of respect for. Just a very good player. Not an elite player, certainly not anymore, but a very, very good, tough player. They get a coach that almost won the Jack Adams, who has got an offensive background and success that, in the pipe to back it up, a resume. I'm like, this is, like I looked at the team and I thought, okay, last year they had John Hines coaching, and you guys know that I don't think much of John Hines as a coach. I think a lot of him as a guy. I think he's a great man, but I, again, don't think much of him as a coach. And so he got him right there on the cusp of the playoffs, and they ended up not making it. Well, now you go out and you get a good coach, and Barry, cuts some of the fat and then brings in some guys that have some winning to them and some new blood onto the roster. Like, yeah, they should make the playoffs, because in the NHL and in basketball, if you don't make the playoffs, you stink. And I didn't think they'd stink. And so this is what I was hoping for, right? Like exciting offense, goaltending that gave you a shot to win every night. And right now, Saros is back to being Saros. Lankinen, I thought, played great on Sunday against Winnipeg. Like, those guys are right back to being what they've been. Like, the goalies gave you a chance every game last year, and they're giving you a chance now that Saros has his early season blues behind him. They're giving you a chance now. Saros played Sunday. Lankinen played Friday. And Lankinen was great Friday. Like, they're giving you a chance every night. And you've got more offense. Like, this is what I was hoping for. And I've been saying it all day. I said it yesterday at the arena to everybody. All I want from this team is to give me a fun February, an exciting March, and give me one competitive round in the playoffs. You don't have to win, but you have to give us the hope that you will. Like, whether it's Dallas, Vegas, I don't think they'd beat Colorado, but maybe. But just give us one competitive 6-game playoff series. And look, if you win the playoff round, then everybody here will go crazy. You get into the second round, and, who knows, with your goalie, he could get hot. You could go far, maybe. I don't know. I'm not expecting it or thinking it or not, but that's just all a bonus to me. Just give me one exciting playoff round. And right now they look like a team that would be capable of doing that. And here's the crazy thing. With last night's win, have you looked at the standings, Ian?
Yes, I have.
The Nashville Predators are currently in the last playoff spot in the Western Conference, which means that they would be opening the playoffs, if they were to make it, they would be opening the playoffs right now on the road at Vegas. They wouldn't win that. So they need to do a little bit more winning in order for us to think that, they're going to give us that competitive playoff series. But in less than a week, the Predators have gone, according to Muddy Puck, from a 50% chance of making the playoffs to an 84% chance. And if they keep winning and they keep climbing up the ladder, and they'll play John Hines tomorrow night, like, if they are able to do this, then they will get matched up in a playoff series that has the potential to be competitive. And I don't look at this Predators team as anything can happen in the playoffs, because I don't think they can win a cup. But I do look at them as anything could happen in the first round of the playoffs, and they could get to the second round and give us, an entertaining year. Like the 2011 Predators that lost in the second round to Vancouver, like the probably not the 2012 Predators, like Laviolette's first year. When they got to the first round, had a great regular season, got to the first round of the playoffs, lost to Chicago in 6. That's what I'm looking for this year. And I think they got a shot, but I'm not going to get back on the bandwagon, because we know what's going to happen if I do that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. There is one move that I think is paying huge dividends. I think there's one coaching move that is paying huge dividends, one GMing move from Barry Trotz that is paying huge dividends. And it's why I believe in this. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company right here, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. And speaking of the Predators, tonight, make sure you don't miss tonight's Smashville Live at Brew House South in Cool Springs, 6 o'clock. See your Predators star players up close and personal, get autographs and pictures. And this week's special guests are Tyson Berry and Ryan O'Reilly. Smashville Live is brought to you by the Black Abbey Brewing Company. at the beginning of the year, I was asking you, what's up with Philip Forsberg? And you talk about, he's got to get it going, and he's the superstar. And, I mean, he's on pace right now for like a 100-point season. He's been on fire. How much of the chemistry between him and Ryan O'Reilly has played a factor in not just his performance, but the entire team's benefit?
Well, I think it's huge. I mean, Philip to me is a huge superstar, and like Roman is, and Saros, and I'll put Factor in there as well. He's known around the league as a star player, and so well respected. But what I see with Philip and Ryan, especially in training camp, they started to have a little bit of a love affair in their play. You could just say the way they were thinking. Mm-hmm. I really believe that Philip really enjoys playing with Factor, and he's having fun. To me, the joy is back in Philip's game, and he's been dominant for us and leading our team. Just as I can go through our team. Ryan and Yos and all our core people, Colton Sissons, all those guys. They've all are high contributing guys for us.
There goes Barry yesterday on the program talking about bringing in Ryan O'Reilly. And I think two things have contributed to Philip Forsberg becoming, the 8-year, $8 million full no move that he was signed to be. Again, he had one 40-goal season in his walk year. Then he signed a big contract, and he was disappointing last year. Now, I know you guys are going to bring up that he's injury-prone, and certainly I am nervous about that too. But I cannot get mad at Forsberg for something that hasn't happened yet. He is playing like a star. And I think that Barry Trotz is responsible for this, and I think Andrew Burnett is responsible for this. I think the number one reason why Andrew Burnett is responsible is this is why you get the offensive coach. This is why you get the guy who's a power play savant. This is why you get a guy who moves them up and down the ice instead of the John Hines, let's dump it in, try to forecheck them, to get them to turn the puck over. Screw that. Just put that puck down, get on the rush, and go. That's the first thing. And I do think that it took some time for everybody, especially defensively, but I think it took some time for everybody to kind of get the gist of what Andrew Burnett was trying to get them to do. And then as soon as it kind of clicked, it's like they've turned the corner. Then there's Barry Trotz. Barry Trotz gets it. Like the Ryan O'Reilly signing, what they did the day before free agency, they bought out Matt Duchene. Matt Duchene did put up some numbers around here, including the 40-goal season. But you always heard, and I say you, I always heard things about Matt Duchene that he just wasn't a leader. The word that I kept hearing when it came to people with the Predators, and again, this is what I'd hear, again, the back chatter, was it was kind of phony when it came to Duchene. They didn't think he was a bad guy. They just didn't think he was a leader. They just thought he was, again, kind of phony. And instead of we're already committed to paying him and he does score some goals from us, Barry Trotz is like, nah, he's gone. Barry fired him. Okay? And I don't even know how Duchene's doing. Ian, I'm sure he's doing well in Dallas.
Pretty good. I wouldn't say outstanding, but he's doing well, yeah.
Good for him.
Johansson also doing well for Colorado.
And I like Johansson. I really like Johansson. I will say this. I think he is a new man and a good man. And I am happy for him. But they didn't need them anymore. Barry signs Ryan O'Reilly. And when Barry signed Ryan O'Reilly, all the box score scouters out there were like, what are they doing? Oh, my God, he's an aging veteran centerman, and he's this old, and they're paying him for this many years, and they should have paid him this much for these years. And I'm like, guys, Barry overpaid Ryan O'Reilly on purpose. Barry overpaid Ryan O'Reilly because Barry wanted to make sure that he got Ryan O'Reilly. It's the same reason the Jacksonville Jaguars overpaid for Christian Kirk. They needed a wide receiver for Trevor Lawrence, so they made sure they got one. Barry overpaid for Ryan O'Reilly because he valued the leadership, he valued the toughness, and I don't even know if Barry knew this, but he is the perfect tag team partner for Philip Forsberg. He is Scottie Pippen, and Forsberg for you is Michael Jordan. And Forsberg got off to a slow start. And as of right now, after that game winner last night, he is tied for 11th in the league in goals. Guess who he's tied with? And again, this comes after a slow start. Braden Point, big boy forward. William Nylander, big boy forward. Mikko Rantanen, who many people will tell you is a big boy forward. I call him Remax Rantanen because I think that he plays with great players, and so that helps him score a lot, but he has scored a lot over the years. And then Zach Hyman, who is the definition of a real estate player. Zach Hyman in Edmonton puts up a bunch of points because he plays with Draisaitl and McDavid. But, like, that's who he's with. Big boy, big boy, big boy. Alex DeBrincat. Like, that's who he's with in terms of goal scoring. One ahead of him, Crosby, Pasternak, JT Miller. Austin Matthews is 2 ahead of him. Like, he's up there right now. And I think that, again, his ascension is a nod at both Andrew Burnett and the style with which they want to play, and Barry Trotz and the foresight that he had to, instead of trying to make it work for the 1 millionth time with some combination of Forsberg and Johansson and Forsberg and Granlund and Forsberg and Duchesne, and no, we're going to overpay for Ryan O'Reilly to put him with Philip Forsberg and to have that kind of duo. And it is working right now. Also, last night, I was on the phone at the end of the game, had the TV on mute when Forsberg put the puck in the net. I thought that Mike Sullivan was off his rocker for wanting an interference penalty on O'Reilly. O'Reilly was trying to get back to make sure that he was onside, collided with Crosby. That's what's going to happen in 3-on-3 hockey. And I cannot tell you how rich I thought it was last night when, again, I had the sound down on the TV and I'm watching the replay on Bally, and I see they've got the camera panned on Sullivan. And Sullivan's standing behind the bench, and as soon as they kind of give it the go-ahead on the goal, you can see Sullivan utter 2 words, and I think it was in the direction of the referees. It could have been in the direction of the fans. I don't know, but I think it was the refs. But Sullivan uttered 2 words that started with an F and ended with a U. And I'm like, that's rich for Mike Sullivan, of all people in that building, to be complaining about the referees. And I didn't think O'Reilly did anything wrong. Did you have a problem with O'Reilly's with the non-interference on Crosby last night?
No, I think it was. I think it looked like the Pittsburgh player collided into O'Reilly as much as anything.
I don't think that there is anything there.
Yeah, O'Reilly looked like he was just kind of standing still right there, trying to remain on side and tag up, and like the Pittsburgh player kind of crashed into him.
All right, we're to your phones on the Predators next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025. Be sure to make your silly underdog picks for your chance to win weekly prizes. You can play at theGameNashville.com or the 1025 The Game app. Silly underdog picks presented by Volunteer Hose and Gasket.
Can winning become contagious in terms of just when you start to see a couple go your way? Can that make a difference in some of these late game situations that you've talked about before?
I think it definitely brings confidence and a good feeling when you're winning. And it's amazing in this game and in any sport how that kind of happens. And we're all looking for that secret potion. Nobody's really had the complete answer to it, but I just know when you're rolling or you're on a streak, it's better to stay on a streak than go off one.
There you go. That's Andrew Burnett. Robbie Stanley asking the question. So there are two reasons. You know, the question I was asking everybody last night at the game, I was like, are the Predators just on a heater right now, or are they actually a good team? And I got, some mixed answers one way or another. Somebody who I have a lot of respect for told me yesterday, I said, so are they good or are they just on a heater? They looked at me and goes, oh, they're average. But they've got Saros, so that's going to make things a lot better. Which takes me to the two reasons, outside of the blind faith that I have in the coach, because I like the coach because he's not last year's coach who will be playing against the team tomorrow. Outside of just that blind faith, I have two reasons why I believe in the Predators. Number one, well, I'm not on the bandwagon, though. I just want everybody to know that, just for clarification's sake. Number one, so Robbie swears by these underlying numbers that apparently determine success. The Adam Vingan, shove it down your throat analytics, GVOA, all that stuff. Apparently, Robbie says the Predators are almost elite in the NHL when it comes to those kind of numbers. I don't know what numbers that he's talking about. If you ask him on the text line tomorrow at 615-737-1025, he will surely see it and be able to answer for you the questions that he is talking about when he was telling me yesterday that he does, in fact, feel like they're letting it fly. Like that they are dominating. And again, these underlying analytic numbers, whatever, that the ones that whenever you lose and someone says, but look at these numbers, I'm like, I shove it. Apparently, they're really good at those numbers. And so when we're trying to decipher whether or not the team is good because they're winning, it's a lot easier for me to say, well, these underlying numbers also say they're good, so that should be something that's positive. The second thing is that the goalie is back. So every year, he is a slow starter. And I wonder if John Hines knew that. Which it took time, to establish that Saros was a slow starter. But if John Hines knew that, would he have gone with Pekka Rinne in the bubble series against Arizona? I think he should have if he knew that. Now, there was no way to know that at that time because UC Saros had never been the number one goalie until then. But Saros is back. And what we've learned with Saros is he's a slow starter. Even, a couple weeks ago when he was not playing well and people were like, well, it's not early anymore. And I was like, yeah, you are a month into the season. Well, again, Saros has proven that he was just starting slow and he was going to be back to being UC Saros. What we've learned is if you've got a bad team and you've got UC Saros in net, you've got a chance to make the playoffs. Well, if you've got a good team with UC Saros in net, shouldn't you easily make the playoffs? And Saros is back. And you'll have a shot every game with him in net when he plays like this. So those are the two reasons outside of I love the coach, I love the GM, I love the direction of the organization. I think they're actually going to pull off a trade here. I think they're going to ship off a defenseman and maybe land a pick or something like that, retain a little bit of salary, and then bring Stasny back up, who I love. Like, I am just thrilled with what I'm seeing out of the Predators. But again, their underlying numbers, according to Robbie, are really good, and Saros is playing really, really well. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHonda.com. Caleb says, Philip Forsberg has been misused his entire time in Nashville until this year. He should be getting the most shots and the most power play shots because he is elite. When it comes to Barry, I love him. And I trust Barry, or at least is telling me as much of the truth as he can. I mean, I thought yesterday, and I love him again for this, I thought it was a little over the top how much he was talking about how great of a coach John Hines was, when deep down inside, I mean,
Minnesota won last night.
They did win last night. But Barry fired him. And Barry's like, this guy, he's such a great coach in the hockey league, and I've seen him, and I've got to know him, and I just think he's great, and I'll be standing up, and I'll be cheering, and I'll be clapping, and and that's why I kind of chuckled, and I was like, you're the classiest guy I know. Because, I mean, that was some serious bald head washing for a guy who he just fired. Let's just tell him what it is. And, but Barry, when we would talk about Forsberg, he's not moved off of the fact that he thinks he's a superstar. And what kills me about Forsberg is that he has by far been the best forward in the history of your franchise, but he's never been a big boy. He's never been a big boy. He's never been, like in these playoff series, a guy who's like, I'm taking over. And so I just never assumed that he would ever be that guy. But I do think it's obvious playing with Ryan O'Reilly and having this coach as his coach, it's made him better. Now, he is streaky. And he was really streaky when Laviolette was the coach, and at times he would carry the team. He'd be so hot. Then other times he was streaky when he was in a contract year. And now, is this just a streak, or has Andrew Brunette unlocked something in Forsberg? I don't know. But the texter thinks that Forsberg is elite, and Barry thinks that he's elite, and I really believe that Barry does think that Forsberg might be a big boy forward. One texter says, Forsberg is and always will be streaky. He disappears. Let's see with this coach, but I don't disagree with that. One texter says, the difference this year is that a lot of players do not have long-term security. The kids are playing for contracts, and they have to limit the number of long-term contracts if possible. I agree with that in the NHL. I think in the NHL, and I think the Penguins are a good example of this, pick 4 guys that you can invest in long-term. They have Crosby, Malkin, Letang, and then everybody else, they're replaceable. Boston, Bergeron, Marchand, Pasternak, McAvoy. Everybody else, we'll see. And that is what I believe with the Predators. The problem is right now, as far as long-term contracts are concerned, Forsberg's got one, Yossi's got one, O'Reilly's got one, McDonough has – how many more years does McDonough have? Is this it?
No, this is not it. Maybe 2 more?
2 more? I mean, that's for a guy his age, that's long-term. Yeah. Shen has, some term on, with him. They're not – they got dudes that have term. Mike says, what I'm seeing from the Predators now is what I've been wanting to see for years. It's exciting, and this is how winning teams play hockey. Amen, Mike. Chris in Lewisburg says, let's just say the Predators are good right now. I'm very nervous about doing that. And you want to know the number one reason why I'm very nervous about doing that? Because when I said they were good at the beginning of the year, they went to crap. And then when I said they were crap, they haven't lost since. So if I were to just tell you right now that, you know what? This team might be good this year. This team may give me what I really, really want, which is, I've never celebrated Christmas before because I'm not Christian. But, Hanukkah, we have certain nights. The first night's usually a pretty good present. Last night's usually the best present. Second night's a good present. But then once we get to the 7th night, it's usually kind of a, playing out the string when it comes to Hanukkah. And then, of course, the grand finale on the 8th night. And I'm sure this is the same for you who celebrate Christmas. But there's what you want for Christmas. And I'm sure some years you get something even better for Christmas. It's like, oh, my God, I really wanted this, but I got better. If this team gets to the second round of the playoffs, that's how I'll feel. I will be so excited because let's not kid ourselves. The football team here stinks. And in the month of May and April, when you're getting into, the teeth of the NHL playoffs, where it's an every other night kind of thing, and you make it to that final 8, there is some juice in that. All I am hoping for is one round. Give me one competitive round. Don't give me that Colorado series 2 years ago where, I mean, at the 8:30 start before Game 4, it was as dead as a doornail in that building. Give me the old Bridgestone Arena back. That's what I am looking for. That's all I want. But I can't get on the bandwagon and just say, okay, they're good now. Like, there's still so much season to play. They beat Colorado in overtime 2 years ago, and I think they were on a heater just like they're on now. And I remember that day being like, wow, this team is legit. And then we know how that season ended. So there's still a lot of season left to go. And so it's hard for me to say, okay, it's more than a heater. But I am hoping, just like for that 8th night of Hanukkah, that it might be really good. 615-737-1025. Joe has launched an inquiry. By the way, one texter says, random thought, am I the only one that can't stand Tomasino? I'll say this about Tomasino. I don't think he's going to make it. But Robbie today was talking about he's playing well, so I'll defer to Robbie on that, but I don't think Tomasino's going to make it. Coming up next, just like I don't think Fabro's going to make it. Coming up next, Joe Rexrode has launched an inquiry on something that he never seemed to question or care about before he became a coworker of Diana Rossini's. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Mike talks to Diana. I think everybody knows that to some degree.
I will interrupt real quick because I've actually asked this aloud. And again, go back to when Diana wasn't at the Athletics, at ESPN. How do we know that? Like, how is that known? Like, is everybody says that as fact, but I know the draft night, right? There was the stuff with Stroud, and she was here reporting for ESPN. But, like, is there something I'm also forgetting with that, or like that was made clear?
If you just retrace like what she has and when she has it and what the simple lines are, I don't think there's much work done to disguise.
So that was this morning with Joe and Paul talking about Mike Vrabel and Diana Russini. And again, the common knowledge, as Paul put out, is that for the most part, Vrabel talks to Russini. That's what we assume. Now, the story that she put out on Thanksgiving, there's no way that could have come from Vrabel. And Joe has been adamant. Again, he works for the same company now. He's co-workers with Diana. Joe has been adamant that didn't come from Diana. And I can just tell you again, or didn't come from Vrabel. And I just know, like, you can't write an article saying Mike Vrabel's not getting fired if it comes from Mike Vrabel. Because Mike Vrabel doesn't have the power to tell you that. That would be like if Mike Vrabel told me, hey, John Johnson at John Johnson Ford is going to sell you a brand new Mustang for $5,000. Well, I can't. Do you know that? Well, but if it was Mike Vrabel Ford and he's like, I'll give you a Mustang for $5,000, it's like, okay. That I understand. It's his to do. So Diana couldn't have written that. But Joe has since launched this investigation, as you heard right there. And he was talking about this all day Monday, about when did all of a sudden everybody just assume that Vrabel was giving info to Diana Russini? And then blamed me for being the reason why everybody thinks that Vrabel's giving info to Diana Russini. Ian, do you think it's my fault that people think that Vrabel is talking to Diana?
I don't know about your fault, but I think you've probably helped.
I mean, all I can do, I don't know, when everybody else decided that they thought Vrabel was going to Diana. All I can do is tell you the moment that I heard it and I was like, Vrabel. And that was in March of 2022. So a year and a half ago. And I remember this like it was yesterday. Caroline, I think, was on vacation at this point in time, because I remember when this happened and I texted her and I was like, I got to send you this cut right now. This is when we were still together. And so I was watching ESPN. And what's funny is Diana and I were talking about this at training camp when the Titans practiced with the Vikings. And, Diana was like, every time you talk about me and every time I get like 10 tweets about, Diana said from Vrabel. And I was like, well, that's because you were on TV one day and it became pretty obvious to me that you were carrying water for Vrabel. And then Diana was like, why don't you have me on your show? And now that I think about this, we probably do need to get Diana on the show. But she went on Robbie and Joe and was like, oh, yeah, I mean, I talk to GMs around the league, and they tell me that Rand Carthon handles all the Titans business, and he's the one in charge of the roster, and I know Mike Vrabel believes in him. It's like, okay. So when I hear something that comes from Diana, for the most part, that could be something that came from Vrabel, I assume that it does come from Vrabel. This was the moment for me where I felt like, okay, she's got a hook into Vrabel. This was March of 2022 on ESPN's morning show, Get Up, in an argument with Bart Scott as to who the best team in the AFC is.
So last I checked, too, Derrick Henry still plays in Tennessee, and they were the #1 team in the AFC without him when he was playing.
That's true.
How do you miss the Tennessee Titans in here?
Have you seen Ryan Tannehill, who now is going to have
consistency? Has Mike Vrabel had a losing season yet? No.
I think what we've learned
Has he figured out how to make that team really good when their roster isn't even that exceptional?
They got Ryan Tannehill, and they doubled down on him.
They have Ryan Tannehill, and they still go as far as they do.
Now they have Matty Ice.
Okay. Now, it's hard because nobody will shut up there, but if you listen to that cut, in it, Diana has no regard for Tannehill, right? Bart Scott's like, They got Ryan Tannehill as their quarterback. And she doesn't stick up for Tannehill. And she even throws the roster under the bus. And at this point, the Titans had just given matching contract extensions to Mike Vrabel and John Robinson. And so Diana, who had been reporting a lot of Titans news at that point in time, Diana could have been getting her info from J-Rob or from, I don't know. But when you say something like, look at what Mike Vrabel does in spite of that roster, doesn't that make it pretty obvious who you're defending there? And so I heard that in 2022. And at that point in time, I was downstairs in my house watching TV. My head popped up. I'm like, Vrabel. I cut the cut. I sent it to Caroline, who I think was on vacation at the time. And without even context to the cut, she goes, oh, my God, she's talking to Vrabel. Like, so at that point in time, like, that's when we felt like, okay, if it's coming from Diana, it's probably coming from Vrabel. I can't speak for when everybody else realized this, but then as I did some digging, I found out Vrabel got promoted with the Houston Texans. He was the linebackers coach, and then they made him defensive coordinator. They moved Romeo Crennel from defensive coordinator to like a, senior football advisor, Jim Schwartz role, and they made Vrabel the defensive coordinator. Why? Because Vrabel was interviewed by Chip Kelly, the then head coach of the San Francisco 49ers, to be the defensive coordinator. Houston, not wanting to lose Vrabel if he gets a better job offer from Chip Kelly, decided, you know what, let's just promote Vrabel here, move Romeo to the side for a second so that we don't lose our star young coach. And so they moved Vrabel up. Guess who reported that Mike Vrabel was interviewing with the San Francisco 49ers back in, 2015, 16, whenever the hell that was? Diana. In fact, I don't ever remember, like through the days of the malarkey drama and everything, I don't ever remember anything from Diana. I mean, I'm sure there was something, but I don't remember anything from Diana. So all of a sudden, Vrabel shows up, Diana starts having all this tea, and then goes on TV and is just tooth and nail defending Vrabel, not defending Tannehill, not defending Robinson. Doesn't that kind of give you an idea? Then there was draft night, and I think draft night was the one that kind of blew the kibosh off all this, that was like where everybody started to really believe it. But, I mean, even at the practice in Minnesota when Diana and I were talking, I told Diana, I was like, we just say that when you report something, chances are there's a pretty good chance that we think that it came from Vrabel. And I don't know if you noticed the wording that I use all the time about how I assume it comes from Vrabel, or I think it comes from Vrabel, or even that little sounder that we play that Joe was making fun of the other day about, this report from Diana comes right from Mike Vrabel. We think. We use words like that, think and assume, because we don't want to get sued. And I've never accused Diana of lying. And I don't even think that this individual Diana report is coming from Vrabel, because it can't. Which actually makes me wonder, well, now does Diana have a hook into ownership? Because this had to come from ownership. So, again, one of my favorites on the Diana front was when she was reporting from the team facility on the night of the draft, which let the cat out of the bag that the Titans were going to try to trade up for C.J. Stroud. The Texans then changed their draft plans because of it. It is well reported, according to Charles Robinson, that Houston was afraid that Arizona was going to draft Will Anderson with the third pick. They had it on good authority that Arizona liked Anderson, so they were going to take Anderson, and then they were going to come back and trade with Seattle to 5 to get Stroud. And when they found out Tennessee was ready to move up to 3 with Arizona, they decided, well, we're going to take the quarterback and keep him away from Tennessee. And a lot of people at the time were trying to say, well, maybe that was Arizona. Arizona was trying to drive up the price. Dude, Diana was in your building. Come on now. So, I mean, I'm not going to accuse Joe of taking up for Diana, because now, I'm not going to accuse Joe of taking up for Diana because they're coworkers at The Athletic. But if Joe wants to know, when did this become This is why and I can't speak for you guys, this is why I think that Vrabel is linked to Diana. Now, one texter says she went on Cowherd today and made it sound like the recent report about Vrabel was from ownership. That's from Jonathan in Chattanooga. That had to be from ownership. There's no way. Vrabel, again, if it's Mike Vrabel Nissan and he says he'll give you a car for $5,000, as a reporter, you can say they'll give you a car for $5,000. If I told you Mike Vrabel will sell you a car for $5,000 at Mike Vrabel Nissan, you can't take that to the bank, can you? Because I don't own Mike Vrabel Nissan. So if Mike Vrabel's saying that Mike Vrabel won't get fired, you cannot report that because Mike Vrabel is not in charge of Mike Vrabel being fired. Let's go to James from Clarksville, who's up next here on the program. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, James?
What's up, man? I got a bone to pick with you, and
give it to me.
It's twofold. First question: if Ian or somebody else tweets something that's anti-Semitic, and I retweet it, what do you think of me?
I would think that you're probably supporting anti-Semitism.
Good point. So, the other day you had this guy on here, and you brought up the article about Rand being a token hiring, and you retweeted it, basically.
Well, I did not say. I asked him.
You,
and even no, James. When I asked him the question about Rand's job performance, I said people interpret that with undertones to it.
I understand that. But you basically retweeted that. But here's my second point.
But I don't think his report is racist. But I understand why people would think that there are true undertones to that, and I addressed it with him in the question. And you have to give me that.
What I will say about that is you vetted him on the air.
Well, what am I supposed to, like, what, are you going to call Chris Sanders before? Say, all right, Chris, what are you going to say when you come on the show today?
Okay, here's my next one.
Okay.
Indy. We love Levis. We love Levis. We love Levis. It's gamesmanship, right?
Sure.
You said that. But Mike Vrabel talked to Diana Ruffin. That's his girl. But they dropped the ball on draft night. So which is it?
Well, what you're arguing is that
Indy's is gamesmanship, and then Titans is they dropped the ball.
Well, a lot of people, and it's actually going to lead in the next subject. Thank you for the call, James. A lot of people seem to believe at that time that the Titans didn't want Stroud and that they whatever you want to call it, smokescreen the Texans into taking C.J. Stroud, who's not even that good. I don't think I feel that way now. And I don't think a lot of you feel that way either. I do want to get to this because those are the Titan base narratives, the Titan Twitter narratives. And apparently Titans Twitter's mad at me again about something. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios. So Titans Twitter's mad at me. This is nothing new. We've had this many a time. In fact, this season alone, I was thinking in my head the times that Titans Twitter's gotten really mad at me. First week, they lose to New Orleans. I watched the tape. I tell you guys, this offensive line is horrendous. ESPN.com puts out a story that says the offensive line's not that bad. And you guys tell me, ESPN.com said the line wasn't that bad. Tannehill's the only reason we lost, Jared. It's not that bad. I'm like, guys, it's horrible. Then it was Aaron Brewer. You guys told me he's tougher than a $2 steak. He's a good center. You just talk about how he's too skinny, but and then he forgot how to snap. And then you started seeing these big old war daddies just push him back like they did last week. And now I don't hear much when it comes to Aaron Brewer. But he hasn't gained any weight since then. But now it's just, Brewer's not very good. And what's crazy is that 99.9% of the time that Titans Twitter gets mad at me, I'm right. 99.9% of the time. In fact, when I side with Titans Twitter, it's usually things like, Chig's going to have a good year this year. It was right to trade A.J. Brown. And when that happens, I end up being with them and I end up being wrong. So the thing that Titans Twitter's mad at me right now about is Peter Skoronski. And there are two issues I have with Skoronski. Number one is the position that he plays, and number two, it is how well he is playing it given where he was drafted. If Peter Skoronski was taken in the 4th round to be your starting left guard, I'd have no qualms about his performance. I think as a rookie, it would be fine for a 4th rounder, and I would envision him as a starter going forward. Kind of like Nate Davis when he was drafted in the 3rd round. Nate Davis had a slow start his rookie year, got better as the season went on, and then I felt like, okay, Nate Davis is the right guard, and I don't have to pay attention to anything else with the right guard sense. But he wasn't. He was drafted with the 11th overall pick, which is a position that you don't draft there. In 2022, the highest guard drafted was Kenyon Green of the Texans, who has been a bust and was drafted with the 15th pick. Zion Johnson was also a first-round pick. I don't know if he's any good or not with the Chargers. And Cole Strange was drafted in the 1st round by the Patriots. And Sean McVay and Les Snead, who were doing their press conference after their 1st round in which they didn't pick anybody, were so shocked that the Patriots drafted Cole Strange in the 1st round that they laughed out loud and lamented the fact that they were wasting time watching his film thinking that he would be available in the 3rd round. In 2021, the highest guard drafted was Aaron Banks in the 2nd round of the 49ers. Now, Elijah Vera Tucker and Alex Leatherwood were both drafted in the 1st round and became guards. And then, in the case of Leatherwood, it didn't work out. And in Vera Tucker's case, he moves all around the line. But they were both tackles who were drafted and then moved to guard. So Aaron Banks in the 2nd round is the first guard. 2020, Robert Hunt of Miami was a 2nd round selection at 39th overall, and he was their 4th pick in that year's draft. Nobody takes a guard with the 11th overall pick. In fact, the Titans were so embarrassed about the fact, this is like a relationship when you're seeing somebody that you're kind of embarrassed to be seen public with. The Titans were so embarrassed to admit that they were going to play Skoronski at guard that when they drafted him and Vrabel was asked what position he was going to play, Vrabel said offensive line. Wouldn't talk about tackle or guard. Now, there's no way that you're going to draft somebody with the 11th overall pick and not have an idea where they're going to use you. And then not only that, but he hasn't taken a snap for the Titans at tackle. But when they drafted him, is he a guard? Oh, no, he's offensive line, because we're afraid to say it. Javon Curse, by the way, it should be noted, played all over the defense at Florida. Played some safety, played some linebacker, played some pass rusher. The Titans drafted him, and before the pick was even in on ESPN, Andrea Kramer outside the complex at St. Thomas Sports Park said, Floyd Reese just told me he's going to play right defensive end. See? Now, here's the other thing. The performance. people have been reeling off these Pro Football Focus pass blocking stats. He hasn't allowed a pressure in 2 weeks, Jared. But again, he's a guard. He's not a tackle. Brian Burns, for instance, last week, doesn't line up over the guard. He lines up over the tackle. And Peter Skoronski is the best offensive lineman on the Titans. But that's because the Titans' offensive line is a steaming heap of trash. Everybody on that line sucks, and so he is the best guy. So if you had one guy like Brian Burns or two guys like Brian Burns and Derek Brown, why would you put Derek Brown on Peter Skoronski when you can just put him on Aaron Brewer? Doesn't that make the most sense? Why would you put Myles Garrett or Nick Bosa or these TJ Watt? Why would you move them inside to go up against Skoronski when you can just put him up against Andre Dillard? So all I know is this. When Floyd worked on this program and we talked about drafting guards in the first round, he told me if you take a guard in the top 10, that guard ought to go to the Pro Bowl every year and right to the Hall of Fame. Not he'll be a good starter for no. He better go right to the Hall of Fame. You drafted Skoronski at 11th. He's not going to make the Pro Bowl this year, and he shouldn't make the Pro Bowl this year. The idea of he's doing okay is not good enough when you're the 11th overall pick in the draft. And here's the thing about the 11th overall pick in the draft. Now, the Titans are probably going to pick 11th overall again this year, but most teams don't want to pick 11th. When you're picking 11th, you draft a guy who is going to win you games, not somebody who's going to help you win games. Brett Kern helps you win games, but Brett Kern doesn't win you games. Micah Parsons wins you games. A.J. Brown wins you games. Guards don't win games for you. The highest paid players at all these positions, the highest paid quarterback in the NFL is Joe Burrow. He wins his team games. The highest paid wide receiver is Tyreek Hill. He wins his team games. The highest paid edge rusher is Nick Bosa. He wins his team games. The highest paid running back is Christian McCaffrey, who again wins his team games. The highest paid guard is Chris Lindstrom of the Atlanta Falcons. How many games has Chris Lindstrom won the Falcons? Do you guys even know who Chris Lindstrom is? I barely know who Chris Lindstrom is. And I know that when I watch the Falcons play, I see a team that's got a tight end they drafted in the first round who's a pretty good player. They got a wide receiver that they can win with who they drafted in the first round. They drafted a running back this year in the first round. And I think that running back can win them games. I don't know anything about the guard. And I know their biggest problem in Atlanta is quarterback, because he's not winning them any games. So when I hear everybody tell me about this was the right pick, don't listen to Jared who says Skoronski's not doing well enough. What you're doing is you're taking, well, he's the best offensive lineman they have, and treating that as if it justifies using the 11th overall pick on a guard. Trevor yesterday, who has been complimentary of Skoronski, even though he said that Skoronski's had an up and down season, he said, I saw some draft analysts that said that he was the 6th best player in this draft. Well, let's think about that for a second. Let's say he was. I don't know what the Titans board was. I don't know what everybody else's board was. He's the 6th best player in this draft. Then why did the 7th overall team pass on him? Why did the 8th overall team pass on him? Why did the 9th overall team pass on him? Philadelphia lost their guard in free agency. Their defensive line was stacked. Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, Brandon Graham, and they drafted Jalen Carter. You know why? Because defensive linemen that are elite win you games, just like Jeffrey Simmons did on Sunday. Guards don't win you games. That's why nobody takes a guard with the 11th overall pick. So once Skoronski was drafted, I argued right then and there that Peter Skoronski has got to play left tackle. No, he's going to play guard. Well, if he's going to play guard, then the standard of the 11th overall pick playing guard when you don't have a left tackle should be right to the Hall of Fame. It should be what Quentin Nelson was to the Colts as a rookie. It hasn't been. Hadn't been good enough. And if you want to treat it like it was a fourth-round pick, like it was Benji Olsen, I can do that. Okay, he's fine. But it wasn't. It was the 11th overall pick. And if you're going to draft somebody with the 11th overall pick, whether it's kicker, whether it's guard, whether it's towel boy, whether it's whatever, that guy better win you games. And no guard in the NFL wins his team games. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. We'll get into that. Plus, there is another new hot thing to be excited about for the Titans that I don't know what some of you people are watching. We'll get to that coming up next. And your phones. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Trevor, what do you think about Jalen Duncan in his first start at left tackle against the Panthers?
Oh, bless his heart. He he battled. He did the best he could, but he is nowhere near ready to be playing left tackle in this league or right tackle, not even remotely close. I mean, he's there because they just don't have any other options. And I don't want to say that he can't play or he won't be able to play ever. I'm saying that he can't play now. He's too soft on pass and run.
Hey, that was Trevor breaking down Jalen Duncan's first start, and I kind of vouch for that. I mean, especially the one where on the ball that Levis threw up there for Chig, he didn't even impede Brian Burns one bit from getting just a smackdown on Will Levis. And again, that's your franchise that's out there. So there's a lot of Titan fans that are really excited about Jalen Duncan, and they're like, Jalen Duncan, yeah, left tackle. I'm like, did we watch the same game? I mean, you heard what Trevor said right there, right? Like, here's the thing. I feel bad for Jalen Duncan because this is how you set people up to fail. Jalen Duncan is a 6th-round raw rookie, right? He's not ready. He doesn't have the technique. They need to build him up a little bit. They need to coach him. They need to all those things. He is the definition of a redshirt player. You draft him in the 6th round because he's got starter's size and athleticism. He's got some experience. You stick him on the bench. You rep him every day in practice, and then he shows up next year at training camp, and you hope that he's ready to go. It was never part of the plan to play him at left tackle. Now, they've done it because they just don't have a choice other than Andre Dillard, and he stinks. But if you think Jalen Duncan was good on Sunday, you just want to believe that because that's not really what happened. Let's be fair to the kid. He wasn't horrendously awful, didn't ruin the game, but he's good. I'm just going to tell you right now, like I worry about playing on the road against Miami or against Houston. Like, I worry about that and him there because we see how much worse the offensive line plays on the road. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com at 615-737-1025. Caleb says, our phone lines, by the way, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, says, Jared, there are more drafts coming to pair the guard. It's a building piece. I get they should have started with a tackle and not a guard, but it's not a bad thing to have a good guard once they got other pieces. You're right, Caleb. It's not bad to have a good guard. Right now, Skoronski's not a good guard. He's an average guard. But it's not bad to have a good guard. The problem is that you get those things later. You don't get those things at the beginning. You get them later. That's why expansion teams don't draft guards with the number 1 overall pick. That's why nobody drafts a guard with the number 1 overall pick. That's why most years guards don't go in the first round unless they're tackles that they move to guard after they realize they can't play tackle, which the Titans never did with Skoronski. I mean, again, it doesn't hurt to have a good kicker, does it? If the Titans end up with the 9th overall pick in this year's draft, Nick Folk's getting up there in age, maybe they need to take a kicker. It doesn't hurt to have a bad kicker. But again, we're talking about when you have a high pick, you need that pick to win you games. When you're drafting in the 3rd round, the 4th round, you want to draft a player who helps you win games. David Long Jr. helps you win games. David Long Jr. does not win you games. Albert Hainsworth wins you games. That's the difference. Steve McNair wins you games. Eddie George, Derrick Henry win you games. Aaron Kinney helps you win games. That's the difference. Texter says, I hate hearing that there are no other options at left tackle. Move the college All-American left tackle over to left tackle and find a guard to plug in. You know, the Titans claimed Calvin Throckmorton off of waivers from Carolina. I have no idea if he's good because everybody on Carolina's offensive line was bad, but I also think Carolina's offensive line is poorly coached. And who knows with Carolina. But this guy started for pretty much the whole season. I have to believe that for the Titans to be successful, like if Vrabel's life was dependent upon beating the Colts, you'd be better off with Skoronski at left tackle and Throckmorton at left guard than you will be with Duncan at left tackle and Skoronski at left guard. I understand the idea of, we think he can be an elite guard, so let's just keep him at guard even though everything around him is a complete dumpster fire. But don't you also want to know if Skoronski does have the positional ability to move around? And every time I hear Trevor talk about it, it's like, well, Skoronski can only do what he can do because the tackle and the center stink so bad. So is it really going to hurt his development if you stick him at left tackle and see what he can do for the rest of the year? I mean, if it does hurt his development, then okay, fine. But would it? When your center's so bad and your left tackle so bad? One texter said, we're excited because of a dude's promise compared to the past failures at tackle. It's a cope, but it's all we have at the moment. I guess that's talking about Jalen Duncan. Ian, can we play the Trevor cut on Jalen Duncan again? Again, Trevor is one of the most glass half full people I have ever met in my entire life. Here was his analysis of the Jalen Duncan that you're saying, well, it's better than the past failed tackles.
Oh, bless his heart. He battled. He did the best he could, but he is nowhere near ready to be playing left tackle in this league or right tackle, not even remotely close. I mean, he's there because they just don't have any other options. And I don't want to say that he can't play or he won't be able to play ever. I'm saying that he can't play now. He's too soft on pass and run.
Okay. Come on now. So somebody tweeted me this, and Hayden from Springfield texted us in. Jared, if you could redo the draft and GM Jared is on the clock with the 11th pick, who are you taking? Now, this is who I said they should take when they were on the clock with the 11th overall pick. Ian, do you know who I'm taking with the 11th overall pick if I'm the Titans and I'm sitting in that exact spot?
Can you give me a position? Or will that give it away?
It'll give it away.
Okay, then no, I don't know.
I would draft Will Levis. And you're going to say, well, wait a minute. They waited to the second round and they got Will Levis. Right. But here's the difference. First of all, with Will Levis picking him with the 11th overall pick instead of picking him in the second round, I get the fifth-year option. But again, if you're going to draft Levis that high, where they drafted him in the second round, you are saying he is your franchise quarterback. Well, if I think he's my franchise quarterback, or I'm going to invest in him like he's my franchise quarterback, I'm not going to let Tampa Bay and Washington and these other teams, the Rams who could get back in, I'm not going to let somebody else get a crack at my franchise quarterback. I'm not going to do that. That's crazy. I also think that once you make that pick of Levis right there, now the entire organization everybody in the organization knows what's what. So when it goes back to, you said, what would GM Jared do with the 11th pick? I liked Levis coming out. I think Levis has franchise quarterback potential. I thought that at the time. You guys got mad at me. I think it now. You guys don't get mad at me because you like him now because he's your quarterback. But you're asking me to go back to that moment in time where I don't think any of us thought Will Levis was going to be available on day 2. There's no way to know that unless you have other teams' draft boards, which is proprietary information. But once we draft Levis at 11, doesn't everybody in the organization at that point know what the plan is for where we're going? The only question then is who's going to be the quarterback this year, Tannehill or Levis? And Ian, if I had drafted Levis with the 11th pick, what's the first thing that would have happened that night?
To the bench.
I would have gone right to the podium, and I would have said Ryan Tannehill is our starting quarterback, and that would have been over. Now, a lot of you are going to say, that's crazy. We got him in the second. We got this. Right, but you didn't know that. And if you like a guy enough that he's a franchise quarterback, you're not thinking that every other team is going to pass on that guy. I liked Levis coming out. I didn't love him. I loved Richardson. But at that point in time, to me, it was twofold. It was Levis, or it was Christian Gonzalez, the corner that ended up going to the Patriots. That's what it would have been. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. Fitz will join us coming up next here. Let's talk about Twice Daily. And if the Titans score on Sunday against Indy in the last 2 minutes, you get a free half sub at Twice Daily if you are a loyalty member, which means Go ahead. They've been good at this in the home games. The road games, they've struggled a little bit. But what you want to do is you want to download the Twice Daily app so that you score when the Titans score. Download the app. Join their loyalty program to unlock special discounts, savings, and so much more. And it pays to be a member with Twice Daily, where you earn points and save money with every visit. When the Titans score in the last 2 minutes of either half, first half, second half, doesn't matter. All loyalty members get a free half sub the following Monday. Or I should say the next day, but in this case with the Colts game on Sunday, it's the following Monday. There's no catch. Just be a Twice Daily loyalty member and redeem your free half sub on the app. Twice Daily. If you're looking for convenience, Twice Daily has you covered. Twice Daily, fresh all day. Stillman and Company here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. A reminder to tune into 94.9 The Fan tonight for Vanderbilt women's basketball. The Commodores will be on the road against North Carolina State. Tip-off at 6:15, pregame at 5:45. And coverage is also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. Jason Fitz joins us now from Yahoo Sports and Fox Sports Radio. Fitz, it has turned into the Days of Our Titans on a daily basis here. Who said what? Who's reporting what? Where did that come from? Who says what? Diana Rossini reports on Thanksgiving that Mike Vrabel is not going anywhere. The Titans aren't going to fire him. The Titans aren't going to trade him. Greg Bedard of the Boston Sports Journal reports on Sunday that Vrabel wants out, that Vrabel is trying to get out of here, according to league sources, and that he and Rand Carthon don't see eye to eye and things of that magnitude. What do we believe about the latest edition of the Days of Our Titans?
You know what makes this, and I'm glad you set it up the way you did. Well done by you. I think the thing that I have to stress here is that I trust Diana's relationships within the organization for where her reporting is coming from, and Greg Bedard is somebody that does really good work, right? So, like, I would say the same. Like, so usually I look at these things and say, well, follow the source and figure out who's telling who what. So what's interesting is that you have Diana obviously talking to somebody in the halls. They're saying, hey, we're not moving off of him at all. And then you have somebody telling Greg, well, you know, he wants out and the Patriots to be interested. I mean, to me, if you just look at this and say follow the wind, it feels like somebody's trying to drive up the value in exchange for Mike Vrabel leaving. That's like, I look, if both reporters are respected at what they're doing, then they're, at some point somebody's being used for information and leverage. What's the ultimate leverage here? Making it clear that Vrabel wants out, but making it clear that the Titans don't want to get rid of him and Vrabel doesn't intend to go anywhere, only drives up the price that the Titans would try to get for Vrabel in exchange. I think that that's what's happening.
You know, Fitz, I think Joe has done a fabulous job of explaining to people, because you know how this works. People will hear something and be like, oh, they're lying, or oh, that's not you. But I think Joe's done an excellent job with his capital J journalist background to kind of explain, you know, what the standards for reporting at the different places these people work at are. And, you know, Ben Volen has a report a couple of months ago in the Boston Globe that Mike Vrabel would be Robert Kraft's home run hire. It sounds to me like the Patriots want Vrabel. And I know they're telling everybody that they want Gerard Mayo, but it goes back to me to the leverage that, okay, well, you know, we're not going to give you a first-round pick. We're not going to give you the third overall pick in the draft for Mike Vrabel because we'll just hire Gerard Mayo. So take less. And then the Titans are like, well, we're not going to trade you, Vrabel, because we like Vrabel. We're not going to fire Vrabel. So if you want Vrabel, you're going to have to pay for it, which makes me think deep down inside that the Patriots want Vrabel, which I think is is that not the number one step in all of this right now?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And everything you just broke down, by the way, like, you know, I had an agent years ago that said, hey, figuring out why reports come out is pretty easy to do if you figure out who benefits from it. Because there's nothing ever gets out if somebody doesn't benefit from it. So that's a callous way of saying some of the same things. But here's the thing. The third overall pick in this is a complicated issue because, you know, there's a very real scenario that could get New England. If you look at the Vegas odds for the rest of the season moving forward, I was talking to somebody at Tankathon about this earlier. There's a pretty good scenario that could get New England to the second overall pick in the draft. Mm-hmm. They're not going to get rid of the opportunity to find their franchise quarterback to get Mike Vrabel. That's not going to happen. So then it becomes, how do they pick up more draft equity? Like, how are they going to pick up something mid-late first round if that's what the Titans really want? I still think that's why it comes down to they're going to basically try and sell, hey, top of the second round, that's almost a first rounder. Now we're talking, right? Like, those become the sort of sales pitches because, yeah, look, I don't think Gerard Mayo, they want to make Mayo seem like the guy. You are not going to replace Bill Belichick with somebody that's never been a head coach in the NFL, in my opinion. Like, you need somebody that can come in there that understands the organization, that understands craft, but also understands how to run a football team from day one. I don't think there's any chance that the Patriots are going to try something new and fresh at the coaching position when they can get somebody that knows how to do it. That's part of what makes Vrabel, I think, an enticing candidate to them.
You know, Jason Fitz is with us. I feel like you threw out the first pitch in the what has now become the Vrabel Carthon. Do they hate each other? Do they not? Is it made up? Is it fake? Is it this? Is it that? And the more there seems to be smoke around this, the more it seems to be real, right? Like I heard Kaharski today even talk about that in the open portions of practice. He doesn't see Vrabel and Rand Carthon, you know, conversing the way he used to see Vrabel and John Robinson doing that. And I just don't believe in this system of a shotgun marriage between a GM and a coach. I don't believe in one guy not having more power than the other. again, you were the one that kind of opened this wound. So with that, kind of what do you think of this Vrabel-Carthon relationship and how that complicates this?
That's everything in the complication of this because, like, look, there are – at some point, every organization has to have a very clear structure. I don't care if we're talking about radio. I don't care if we're talking about, ESPN or Yahoo, or if we're talking about a football team, right? Like, you have to have a very clear structure and who's in charge of what and who has say on what. And it's really important in the culture of football teams to have a true understanding of exactly who does what at every single step. But the other part of it is when guys are in lockstep in an organization, you don't hear anything. Think about the ultimate draft surprise a few years ago. How stunned were all of us when the 49ers moved up, paid a king's ransom, and everybody thought it was going to be Mac Jones. I'm sitting with every major insider in the world, and everybody thought it was going to be Mac Jones. And they traded up for Trey Lance, right, which they had known internally in the organization they were going to do for weeks. They knew that was their target. Nobody heard about it. Why? Because when there is actually no issue, everybody understands the most important thing that NFL teams want to do, which is keep your mouth shut. Players will tell you all the time, the one thing that they get coached on when they come into a team is don't make your teammates answer questions about you. And that is true in front office situations also. So the minute leaks start to happen, that's when you know there's a fracture. Because, like, you and I are friends. If a reporter came to you and said, hey, man, give me the dish on Fitz, you would say no. If somebody came to me and said, give me the dish on Stillman, I'd say no, right? Those things don't happen unless there's a fracture in the relationship to begin with. We don't get to this point. So I think the fact that not only did it happen, but the roar just keeps going and going, and the reporting keeps going and going. This is not an accident. This obviously behind the scenes. These are people that really don't give a damn about whether or not the information gets out to the world, and they don't care if it messes up the other person. They're coming out and saying, hey, I'm tired of this. This is the way I'm going to handle it. When you get into save yourself mode, there's a fracture in the relationship behind the scenes. I will die on that hill 100 times out of 100.
Is there any chance that it can be reconciled between the two, in your opinion? And again, you were the one that kind of brought this to everybody's attention of there being an issue, at least over that one story with Ian Rappaport and Will Levis. Is there any way, in your opinion, that this can be reconciled, fixed, and the Titans can live happily ever after?
Yeah, so here's what it takes to reconcile. I think it takes sort of a kumbaya from ownership to sit down with everybody. But the most important thing to reconcile, and this is why to answer your question, I don't think it can be reconciled. Because I don't know that there has been the level of mutual respect it would take to allow it to reconcile. Like, you've got to have two people looking across. Like, I've used this analogy with you before, but years ago when I was in a band that nobody ever heard of, and I was going to leave that, I was quitting the band. And we had just spent almost a year of our life opening for Kenny Rogers. And so I get a call one day. Kenny Rogers, the great Kenny Rogers, says, come to my hotel. I want to talk to you about leaving the band, because he heard I was leaving. And I sat down with Kenny, and Kenny said, man, if you're in a project and you look left and right, whatever it is, and you don't look around and think, God, I need these guys. Like, these guys make me better. If you don't have that level of mutual respect and you believe they don't have that level of mutual respect for you, you should leave the band. And so the funny thing is, like, I think everybody thought I was sitting down with Kenny to get talked into staying, and he actually really cemented my decision to leave. But I say that because in order to fix a fragmented relationship, I believe that Rand Carthon would have to look at Mike Vrabel and say, man, you are great at what you do, and I need you to execute. And I think Mike Vrabel would have to look at Rand Carthon and be like, dude, you are great at what you do, and I need you to execute. If that could happen, and Amy Adams Strunk could sit in the middle of all of this and lead this kumbaya of mutual respect, sure, anything can get fixed if you have that. I just don't think that they ever had the foundation of respect for each other to that level from the outset to really give the benefit of the doubt in the relationship. That's why I think it's broken.
Jason Fitz is with us. Do you think at this point there is any chance, like, this is what I'm going to ask you. What % chance would you make it that Mike Vrabel's the coach of the Titans next year?
25 max. I don't even know if I feel good about that.
Even though Diana reported on Thanksgiving that no way, no how he's leaving the Titans, and I think you and I would both agree, Diana is not lying. Diana might be lied to, but Diana is not lying.
Now, look, I will say loudly, I mean, Diana's a friend, and everybody knows Diana's a friend. Part of the reason Diana is a friend is because I have watched her work her ass off when nobody's looking to get the information she gets to build the relationship she has. I will again, I will scream this loudly from the mountaintops. There is 0% chance that Diana would ever make up a story or lie about a story. So you are 1,000% right about that. Does that mean she's not being lied to? No. And I'll tell you, the only pause that I have, I would give you 0% chance if it wasn't for that report. And I'll be honest, like when I saw the article come out, I read it like 3 times in a row and it just sat my mouth hit the floor. I was like, I can't believe I'm reading this. Like, this doesn't seem to match anything that makes sense in my mind or anything I'm hearing in other places. So I am certainly, like, there is no doubt in Diana's greatness and professionalism at what she does. I just think somebody somewhere is feeding information for the wrong thing. And part of her job, and she does this well, is to decipher through the BS. We all know that. I can't find the end game that keeps everybody together. The chances that Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel are together next year in the organization, I think, is absolutely 0. But I think the chance that Mike Vrabel is back as a coach is 25% max.
Jason Fitz, as always. By the way, I like Diana too. I would say that we're cordial. I don't think she likes me very much, but that's okay. I like her.
You know what? Well, I'll put in a good word. She's the best.
Well, here's what she said to me. So we were talking in Minnesota, and I was like, yeah, I just, I say that, for the most part, Vrabel is your source. And we talk about that all the time because she says every time we talk about her, she gets a bunch of tweets or whatever. And I was like, she wanted to come on the show. And I'm like, Diana, it's just going to be me badgering you about, your sourcing with Vrabel. Like, and that's what that's going to be. Like, but I do like Diana. I don't know if she likes me. I have learned a long time ago that it's okay for people to not like me and me still like them. I still like you, Fitz.
You know what? She's a Jersey through and through, right? She doesn't like you. You'll know. You're fine. You're fine. I'm just saying. Like, Diana doesn't mince words. You're fine. I love you, buddy.
Jason Fitz, as always, joining us on the program. 615-737-1025. So there was something that I was probably going to save maybe for tomorrow or, whatever. But a lot of you have asked about this in the text line. And I think there's an explanation for why the Titans are not doing this. I don't think it's a good one. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
What do you make of this? Got a question on the text line. It says, am I missing something? I haven't heard Rand Carthon speak for months.
No, he hasn't
Is that
spoken
common
for
for a general manager?
I hope he speaks to Mike.
Yeah. But I mean, what do you make of that, the fact that he has not either been made available or has not chosen to address the media here for a few months?
Look, he's mute Rand right now. What he's going to say is it's not my season to talk. My season to talk is the off season when player moves are made and everything. But say what you will about John Robinson, when big stuff went down akin to Kevin Byard being traded, he made an effort to step up there and answer for it. And, of the qualities that Robinson had that were good and bad, that was a good one. And Rand doesn't necessarily follow suit on that one.
That was Paul earlier today talking about Rand Carthon. Have we heard from Rand? And a lot of you have texted into the text line and you've said, is Rand Carthon ever going to hold a press conference? Why haven't we heard from Rand Carthon? And so there's been a couple of texts throughout the day about that, so I'll just address it right now. Paul's right. What's going to happen, the reason why, the excuse for not hearing from Rand Carthon is that the team will say, well, during the season we want to have one voice, and that one voice is Mike Vrabel. Then during the offseason, Rand will talk more than Vrabel. So you'll hear Rand at the combine. You'll hear Rand before the draft. You'll hear Rand after the draft. You'll hear Rand before training camp. The bare minimum that the NFL requires Rand Carthon to talk, that is where you will hear Rand Carthon talk. Other than that, I don't know what you will hear. But on one hand, I'm going to chastise that. And on another hand, I'm going to accept it. Let's start with the acceptance when it comes to Rand Carthon not talking to the media. And that is, Barry Trotz, for instance, comes on this show every week. Win, comes on the show. Lose, comes on the show. Barry knew what he was getting into when he signed up for that. He knows, just like yesterday, when I asked him right there, why'd you send Spencer Stasny down? He was playing well. That if things don't go well, he's going to be asked about it. But Barry can do whatever Barry wants. Because Andrew Burnett works for Barry. They don't work together. When it comes to, well, we've decided that during the season the coach is going to be the voice because the coach is on the same footing as the general manager. If the general manager were then to say, I want to hold a press conference today, well, now you're starting to know that's his job. He's the coach during the season, one voice. So that's that part of it. The other part of it is this. The day that Rand Carthon got hired or got introduced as the general manager of the Titans, Rand Carthon walked into the media, fresh J's and everything. And he said to the media inside the media room before his press conference, and I don't know exact, I'm paraphrasing here, but I was standing right there, as was everybody else. And Rand Carthon said, I hope that we can have a good relationship. I just wanted to come by and introduce myself and I'll get to know you guys over time. And, it was very cordial. It was very down to earth. I respected it a lot because, the general manager has to have a working relationship with the local media. He's got to have a working relationship with the national media, has to have a working relationship with everybody, even people you hate. You have to have a working relationship with. But ever since then, there hasn't really been a lot of that, right? Like they trade Kevin Byard, and we don't hear anything from Rand Carthon. I mean, not even a, hey, I'm the general manager. I should be the one to put my hand in the air. It's obvious Byard blames Rand Carthon. He thanked Amy Adams Strunk, John Robinson, Mike Mularkey, and Mike Vrabel in his goodbye to the Tennessee fans. I mean, it's obvious he blames Rand Carthon. Rand should have done a sit-down, whether it was with Gentry Estes or with Nick Suss of the Tennessean, or whether it was, even a radio hit, even, again, on their flagship station. Now, I don't think it could have been a Mike Keith or a Jim Wyatt thing. I think it would have had to be, with at least somebody that at least shows a little bit of a hint of objectivity, to show that it's not just some softball, team-focused thing. But then I think about Rand Carthon, too. And I've noticed this. Over the years, Mike Vrabel, any opportunity Mike Vrabel gets to miss his coach's show, he takes. So when they went to London, He didn't do his coach's show. When they play on Thursday Night Football, he doesn't do his coach's show. Sometimes when they play on Monday Night Football, he doesn't do his coach's show. Any opportunity Vrabel gets to ditch the coach's TV show, he does. In years past, it was John Robinson who sat in when Mike Vrabel wasn't available. Now, it's been Dave McGinnis. And that is something that I have noticed. It's almost like, don't put Rand Carthon out there for whatever reason. Put Coach Mack. Now, I love Coach Mack. I think Coach Mack's a good man. But when we watch the coaches show, we want to see the people in charge of the team on there, right? And as much as I love Coach Mack, he ain't in charge of the team. So I would say that, if you're really in charge or if you've really got power or some kind of authority, I would maybe want to show it. And I don't mean in the sense of, I am in charge, let me meet with the media. But I do mean from an accountability standpoint of, hey, fans, I traded away Kevin Byard. Here's why I did it. I'm going to level with you. Hey, fans, we thought we were going to put together a roster that was going to compete this year. We now feel like we didn't. We failed. We're looking to the future. We believe in Will. We believe in this team going forward. But, reality's reality. And I don't see a lot of that from Rand. All I ever heard this offseason, and I was a part of some of this, but all I ever heard was every rumor was not true. But I didn't hear a lot of explaining as to, well, if that you were shopping Derrick Henry rumor is not true, well, then what is the truth? If you're not interested in moving on from Ryan Tannehill, if you and Ryan had a talk, well, what does that mean? Apparently somebody says that Rand did do one coach's show this year. Okay. I didn't see it. 615, so I apologize if that is the case. 615-737-1025. Jared versus Joe is coming up next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Stone and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios. It is 5 o'clock on a Wednesday, which means it's time for the best debate in Nashville sports. Caroline is here. Hello, Caroline.
Hello, how we doing?
Outstanding. I actually said on Twitter, I said this is the best Nashville sports debate, even better than Mike versus Ran, Jared versus Joe.
Jared Stillman versus Joe Rexrode. Now on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game.
Caroline, first of all, Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. Caroline, where are we sharting?
What's up?
Oh, God. Oh.
Where are we starting? Excuse me.
I did hear that sharding was a topic of conversation this morning. Unfortunately, I did miss that. Would anybody like to enlighten me about the shart talk?
Ian?
Robbie put the video out.
Okay, Robbie put the video out. That we'll get to it later. But yeah, Kaharski said sharding today on the air. I was at the gym and I laughed, and it was like I had headphones on, so people turned and looked at me as I was laughing. But then part of me was laughing because Joe was dying on the other side. Caroline, go.
Okay, so Paul Kaharski was on with Robbie and Joe this morning, and he addressed Greg Bedard's comments. This is what Paul Kaharski had to say.
But there's a nugget in what he reported. And what he should have said was, like, I reported what I reported, and I can't really discuss it further. And I'll say, like, I know that there's a nugget in what he reported, and I can't really discuss it further. I don't have it that I can report it. So I wouldn't be talking about it unless Bedard brought it up.
Okay, but let me stop you there. Because he had the Vrabel stuff.
I'm talking about the Carthon.
You're talking about the Carthon stuff. Okay.
So, I mean, you get what I'm saying. There's something about Carthon in San Francisco that's noteworthy.
Okay.
I don't know that it had a big bearing on his job performance, but in scouting circles, there was a thing. I don't have it reportable beyond that, and I wouldn't be talking about it unless Bedard brought it up.
Okay.
And then butchered it on your airway.
He did butcher it on the airwaves. But is Paul Kaharski insinuating that there's some truth to the Greg Bedard report about Rand Carthon? Jared, you go first.
I think he is. I mean, I think that he's, again, I the term like, oh, there's no there, or there is a there. I think what Kaharski is implying is that there is a there, but that he doesn't have it confirmed to the point that he would tell you about it if Bedard didn't tell you about it without being willing to say that he has the there that is there, if that makes any sense. I see this, and this is to me unfortunate because I don't know what's true and what's not, but I mean, I'm a big believer that you cannot unring the bell. And that's why sometimes I these court shows I'll watch where, objection, the sustained, the jury will disregard the last comments. It's like, yes, but you can't really do that. And so with the Bedard thing, he came on the show. It didn't feel like he really had a lot of conviction behind what he wrote or wasn't willing to share that conviction. And so to me, it's hard to charge Rand with a crime because I don't, what's the evidence here? And then Paul, however, who's got a lot of credibility, especially here, Paul is kind of throwing his hand in the air saying, I second it. Now, Paul told me today, he said, I didn't ring the bell, but I do think he rang that bell. And you can't unring it. And so I think he is insinuating that there is a there with Greg Bedard's report.
Well, yeah, I mean, he is insinuating this, but I got to say, I really hate this. And because just listening to that again, obviously I was part of that conversation. I'm listening to it again. And, like, anyone listening to that could go a lot of different places with it. Yeah, and that's I just have a problem with all of this. I really do. I think Rand has been done wrong by this. I think if you really want to boil it down, Rand has been done wrong by the Patriots. I mean, that's, like, again, Greg Bedard's not just throwing crap against the wall, especially like just going after someone he doesn't even care about in what he's writing about. Mm-hmm. But the Patriots did.
they made sure to smear him a little bit, and he let them use him, and so here we are. And I don't, look, I appreciate Kaharski being willing to talk about whatever he's willing to talk about, but I listen to that, and what I know of this, it's really not a big deal. And so I think I can see people taking this like, oh my gosh, what is it? And I don't think who knows? It probably won't see the light of day. To me, if my understanding is it's trivial, and frankly, Rand Carthon could be the greatest GM of all time, could be the worst GM of all time. I don't think any of this has anything to do with that. Basically, can he do the work with his staff to make the correct choices? There's nothing that's been talked about, whispered about, suggested that tells me no, and yet I think people are going to hear all this and have a more negative outlook on him, and I just don't think it's fair.
So to that point, it does sound, I'm trying to, I don't want to just say that this is what happened, but it does sound to me like Paul told you off. Let's just say that were the case. If you were to tell me and Caroline what it was, what do you think our reaction would be?
Dude,
Or would we be like, oh, who cares?
Again, I have a limited, I didn't know. I checked on, Rand's stuff when he got hired with people, including people in San Francisco, and I actually did it again the other day, and the same thing came back. Like, I don't know anything about that. The only, Peters was ahead of him, right? That would be the one thing you could say is like maybe Peters got more credit within the organization, but that's basically how it was organized. So my limited understanding is, there would absolutely be. It's just like, oh, okay. That's where these things just. And there's so much about this that we don't have time because this isn't me on a soapbox. This is us arguing. But just the over reliance on anonymous sources, the willingness to throw out a little Easter egg when you can't actually report something really bothers me.
Well, and not only that, to this point, what I do think is in both these cases, what it sounds like, and I think the three of us all three of us have incredibly different experiences. But, whether it's Caroline, who is, I would argue, probably relatively early in her radio career. Me, I've been in it for a decade. You, Joe, have been doing radio. I know you did some in Michigan, but you've been here on the radio for 4 years. But you're a capital J journalist. But I think all three of us have kind of experienced, like, when you just you're talking. You're just talking and, you hear a little bit of something here, you hear a little bit of something there, and the amount of little bit of something that
Yeah, and the thing is, there's as old as I am, there's been a million of those, and some of them have been dead on, and some of them have been 180 degrees wrong, and that's the problem. Because sometimes people have, have motivation to dirty the water, so to speak. That's what happens every year at draft time, right? We see it every year.
Caroline?
So, another report that came out over the weekend, Diana Rossini says that the Titans ownership feel like they have the right coach in place for sustained success. Why do we think that Titans ownership put that out there? Joe, you go first.
Well, I will say, the report said Titans higher ups. I think that's the implication, but I'm just saying, just to quote the report accurately. Why do
Here's the analogy I've been using. If it was Jared Stillman Nissan, and I said I'd give you a car for $5,000, you could probably trust that you'd be able to get a car for $5,000 at Jared Stillman Nissan. If Caroline said that you could get a car for $5,000 at Jared Stillman Nissan, does Caroline have the authority to give you a car for $5,000 at Jared Stillman Nissan? No. So Mike Vrabel doesn't have the only people that have the authority is of whether or not Mike Vrabel's going to keep his job that she could report on it would be the people that own the team.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That was interesting, but yeah, I'm picking up what you're putting down. So to answer your question, why do we think they did it? Why do the Titans want that out there? I think first of all, I think they were reacting in some part to the job status coming up as a storyline, which is Kaharski asking that was at Jacksonville, right? Yes, at Jacksonville. I think some of it is reaction to, now the storyline is, like, do you feel safe in your job? So they felt necessary to tell people, yes, calm people down. Look, I mean, you've been talking hot seat. We've been talking on this hot seat. There are fans who are like, I want him gone. I mean, my goodness, Adam from Portland thinks he's the worst coach in the history of the NFL now.
I'm worried about Adam.
But I also think there's an element of it that is what we're seeing is like the Patriots and Titans kind of going back and forth through media over this whole thing. And so if it's necessarily a bad thing to let the Patriots know, yeah, this is our guy, sticking with them, that's the plan, thank you very much. And, whisper, if you're going to come, you better come strong with an offer.
So I do think that if the Titans were trying to pump up the leverage for Mike Vrabel, this would be one way to do it. But just given the history of the Titans, I'm not exactly sure that they're smart enough to do that. What I am certain of with the Titans is that when there's drama surrounding the coach in the middle of the season, there is nothing that they want to do more than make it go away without actually having to speak up themselves. I mean, they did this when Amy Adams Strunk released a statement about Mike Mularkey ahead of the New England playoff game 5 years ago. I think they did this last year when Amy Adams Strunk sat down with Teresa Walker, and there were just clips of the interview that were released, but it was certainly not, a real Q&A in terms of, like, it wasn't a grilling as to what happened, but they did it because they had to do it because they had gotten shamed for not speaking for 3 days about firing the general manager. And I think that this is their way of doing it, of going to Diana on Thanksgiving Day and basically telling her, like, we're not firing Vrabel. We're not moving on from Vrabel. He's our coach. I wonder if they told Diana, Mike Vrabel is our coach and is our head coach and will be our head coach going forward, just like their Mike Mularkey statement was 6 years ago. But, I mean, what's obvious to me is into even more of a story and even more of a speculation. And I think that today Paul made the joke that they're out there playing checkers, and I think there might be something to that, just given what I think of the Titans' navigation of the media.
Well, but remember, they did what they did, and then we get this. I swear, it's amazing how much we're saying the name Bedard, and it's not Connor we're talking about. But, I saw that and say, hey, Greg, you want something? I got something for you. And, So I think the Patriots have blown it up.
Here's what's fascinating to me about this. Why Diana? Diana, that's Vrabel's hand-picked source. Why Diana? Now, normally when the Titans, when it comes from up above, normally they go to the league network. Pelissero or Rappaport or Garofolo, or usually when it comes from the Titans brass, it goes to the league-owned network. Why Diana?
Maybe to divert the idea that anything that goes to Diana Rossini comes from Mike Vrabel.
I will say this. Now, I've told Diana to her face, and I like Diana, but I've told her, I think that she is, the source of Vrabel. We've played the cut, earlier today because Joe wants to launch an investigation as to why everybody thinks that everything from Diana comes from Vrabel. We played the cut from Get Up where she where she chucked Tannehill and Robinson under the bus in order to pump up Vrabel from 2022, all of that. Man, that is like the getting together and huddling up and saying, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put this out there, but we're going to put it out through Diana so that then everybody will think that Diana is not Vrabel's hand-picked insider.
We're getting into playing from Green Bay territory of overthinking.
This is, but it has made me think about the whole draft night. Like, what if one of the owners was the one who leaked it to Diana? If the owners are talking to Diana now, I don't know. It's a lot there. More Jared versus Joe continues next. Stillman and Company. Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors. Stillman of Nashville. Stillman and Company. 102.5, 106 for the game. Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville, Caroline.
All right, Jared, you go first here. What was your evaluation of Will Levis on Sunday?
I didn't think Will Levis was very good. I thought that the first touchdown drive, I thought Will Levis was excellent. I mean, I thought there were a couple of throws where he delivered the ball with what I call, with special sauce on it. There was one on the sideline to Chig where Jalen Duncan just decided not to block Brian Burns, and he got lit up and just popped the ball perfectly over for Chig. He had some great throw to Westbrook Akine to set up the field goal, even though I thought that was horrendously stupid defense from Carolina. But outside of that, I did not think he played well. And my favorite part about his day was when he got to the podium after the game, he took ownership for not playing well. He talked about his ball placement wasn't good, a cadence issue he put on himself. I mean, it felt like listening to his post-game press conference, which I'm not sure Joe listened to, since Joe decided to ask the Mark Stoops question that had already been asked.
I couldn't hear Gentry's question.
Okay. We gave you a new original nickname for that, by the way. He's probably asleep on this one, too. Anywho, so I really appreciated.
What's his nickname?
Well, so we got Bad Take Joe. We have Joey Stackhouse. We have GB Joe. We have Joseph Robinette Rexroad Jr. And now this new original one that I thought of myself and had no help of, Sleepy Joe.
All yourself with no help.
All myself.
Completely original, never been done before.
Never. So anywho, Sleepy Joe probably didn't hear Levis take ownership for how poorly he played on Sunday. But I did not think he was very good, and I really appreciated that he not only took ownership, but explained where he thought he could have done better, which I thought was encouraging. The two things that I'm like, this can't happen. One was the missed 25-yard ball to DeAndre Hopkins where he threw it 3 yards behind him. You can't have that. That's too big of a gain to miss in the NFL. And then the second was the one that almost landed Tajay Spears in the hospital. I mean, where he just floats a ball out there with the safety standing right there. I mean, if that's Ed Reed or Ray Lewis or Rodney Harrison, and this is 20 years ago, Tajay Spears is probably still at the hospital right now because they would have murdered that man when you put that ball out there, and you just cannot throw that in the NFL. So I thought Levis's performance itself was not very good, but there were some bright spots, and I do appreciate his accountability for his performance after the game.
Yeah, I mean, I mostly agree with that. I heard at some point, I thought you said terrible. I didn't think this was his worst performance. I mean, I thought his performance at Tampa Bay, where he put the ball in harm's way, for example, was worse than this one. But I agree, those passes, you can't float that one up like that. You got to hit the Hopkins. There's a Hopkins deep shot available you didn't take. It wasn't perfect. I just find it difficult to evaluate Will Levis since I still think that maybe his best performance was that game at Pittsburgh on the short week, with what he did overall that night, just operationally and all that stuff. The first game he comes out and it just bombs away and guys are wide open. The opportunities are so limited. I mean, they had 39 plays at Jacksonville, and they got up to 50 this game, but it's such a limited offense. It's a limited look at him. I thought he was okay.
I thought he was much better against Tampa Bay than he was this week against Carolina.
Yeah, see, to me, I put a premium on don't make stupid throws that can be picked off. Now, he did have the one telegraphed on the third down, the short route to Hopkins that, was a little bit too risky. But the Tampa Bay game, I mean, he had 3 passes in that game, if I remember correctly, that easily they were just you cannot throw that pass. So, and that's what you got to clean up. You can't throw that passes, and then obviously those are the two questions with him. The killer picks and then just the consistent. Actually, I think his accuracy's been pretty good overall. But yeah, a couple of those misses, it's man, those are layups that you got to hit as a quarterback. It was fine. I didn't think it was bad. I thought that the 2-minute drive for the half and like you said, the first drive were really good. It's hard to evaluate them right now.
I mean, I go back to the Tampa Bay game, and I'm trying to think all of this off the top of my head. But the Tampa Bay game, I mean, yeah, once they got down, once Tampa Bay scored the touchdown, I think it was the Mike Evans one. Or no. It was when the Titans kicked the field goal which made no sense to take it from 14 to 11 in the fourth quarter, and then Tampa marched down the field and kicked a field goal to make it 14 with 7 minutes to go. Levis started throwing stupid passes, but I think that was just dictated because Levis struggles when he feels like he's got to go out there and make a play to win the game, which he never had to do because Carolina sucks so bad. But in the Tampa Bay game, like, he threw a beautiful ball on 2nd and long for Chig, and he dropped it. He threw a ball in the end zone for Chig, and he dropped it. And DeAndre Hopkins made a great play to keep it from being an interception, but that wasn't Levis's fault. That was Chig's fault. He threw a beautiful ball down the field on the deep shot to NWI, and he dropped it. So, I mean, and I also compare the two defenses. I know that, statistically speaking, Carolina's defense is higher ranked than Tampa Bay's, but I think Tampa Bay's defense is much better, or at least especially on the road. I really thought this was Levis's worst performance because his ball placement just wasn't – it just felt like a lot of blah out there on Sunday from him. And I do think thing, and I noticed a video TD posted today, Levis is hurt. And that's bad news.
Yes, I agree.
Caroline?
On to the next. Joe, you go first. Bobby Petrino hired as Arkansas's offensive coordinator. Genius or disaster?
Oh, I mean, God, maybe both. Could it be both? I mean, it's just amazing when if anybody who doesn't know what all went down with Bobby Petrino when he was last at Arkansas, check it out. It's all on the internet. I mean, it's just the whole thing. Even like not firing Sam Pittman and giving him like the vote of confidence, and then, hey, great response from the team. Lose 1,000,000 and get into a brawl. I mean, it's a great situation. So now, I mean, I think this has to be what the view has to be. Okay, so after about 6 games, Pittman's out next year. And so Bobby Petrino is all ready to be your interim head coach. But is this actually them just trying to set it up for him to be their coach again? And why do people think Bobby Petrino is such an asset still? I mean, it's not like he went down to Texas A&M and, Jimbo, yeah, there you go. That fixed things. I mean, that offense was still very stodgy. And I don't understand the fascination with the guy. He had his time. It's like Chip Kelly. People can still get excited about Chip Kelly if they want. I mean, when the Oregon offense was absolutely unstoppable and no one had any idea what to do with it in 2012, well, he was as coveted a coach as there was, and now he's just a dude. He's just a guy. People catch up, and I just don't understand why Bobby Petrino, with all his baggage and with all I've heard from people about how awful he treats people,
he's the worst,
would be any attractive in any way. It is pure disaster.
I mean, I feel very guilty with this because I was on the radio in 2014 in Louisville, Kentucky. In fact, fun story, I actually interviewed Joe Rexrode on the radio in Louisville about the defensive coordinator at Michigan State, Pat Narduzzi, and whether or not he'd be a good fit to replace Charlie Strong as the head coach. Do you remember doing that interview, by the way?
Well, we've talked about it, but yeah, I do. Yeah.
But do you actually remember?
He would have been a good hire. I mean, not really, but I probably said he would have been a good hire because he was a hell of a D coordinator.
And so I was in favor of the decision to bring Bobby Petrino back. Now, at the time, Bobby Petrino had served a 1-year pittance at Western Kentucky, and the thought was that, Bobby Ball was going to come back and, put up all these points and win all these games, and you know what, who cares if he's an a-hole, we'll deal with it. Well, the worst part about it was that Bobby Petrino, behind the scenes, they called him Bobby 2.0 because he had changed his ways, still an a-hole. Secondly, he was terrible. Lamar Jackson wins the Heisman, and we get into the Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl where we lost by 8,000.
I believe it was the Texas Bowl.
Nah, it was the Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl. We lost to LSU by 8,000.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it was embarrassing. And that's with Lamar Jackson. And then the next year, we go into the TaxSlayer Bowl and lose to Mississippi State with an entire backup coaching staff because Dan Mullen had gone to Florida. And so it was terrible. And then we gave Bobby a contract. We had to live with the shame of going back to Bobby, and then we didn't get to enjoy at least like the shame. Like Kentucky fans know when they hired Calipari, like there was a little bit of shame there, but guess what? You win, so it doesn't matter. We didn't have the winning. If I was the athletic director at Arkansas and Sam Pittman walked in my office and he said, I think Bobby's the key, I'd say, Sam, I'm going to let you walk out of this door. I'm going to pretend this conversation never happened. If you walk back in here ever again and suggest this, you're fired. Now please leave the office. I think this is disgusting and embarrassing, and I said yesterday, I think Arkansas fans should be allowed to pick a new team to root for. But, I mean, who knows? What a disaster. Caroline, who wins?
It is disgusting and embarrassing, but I think it's absolutely hilarious. Did we side on things today?
No, we didn't disagree on anything.
I don't think we did either.
It's a toughie.
This is a toughie. I'm going to say Joe wins for Jared's take on Will Levis being way too dramatic about how bad Will Levis was on Sunday.
Will Levis said Will Levis was bad.
Of course Will Levis said Will Levis was bad, Jared.
Will Levis was bad.
You are being too overly dramatic about how bad he was.
Oh, I was not happy with his performance. I mean, I was bad team at home. They're putting up 27 points a game, and he went out there and almost landed Tajay Spears in the hospital.
He did do that. That was bad.
I mean, you know what's funny? Like, and I don't want to like sound like some old pop, and I certainly don't want to sound like, Caroline, you don't know about this because, I mean, you were alive in 2004. But I what were you, like 6 in 2004?
I was 7.
Okay. Like back in the day, Joe
God,
knows
I'm
this.
depressed.
You throw that ball the way he threw that for Spears. If that's the pre-concussion era of football, that is the number one on a segment they used to have on Monday Night Countdown called Jacked Up, where they would sit around and they'd be like, Tajay Spears, he got jacked up. And, like, everybody would celebrate those big hits. And Spears, honestly, is still in the hospital right now, if this is 20 years ago.
But it's not 2004.
And three, that's right. And 3 Titans fight Levis, too, after the game for doing it. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's true as well. Guys, thank you so much. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company, here on the program. Let me tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love those guys. They take great care of my home, and they can do the exact same for you. And Hiller's Cash for the Holidays promotion is back. They're giving away cash for the holidays with select purchases, and Hiller wants to make sure every child experiences the joy of Christmas this year. So they're donating $50 in Toys for Tots with every tankless water heater purchase. And they're giving away a $250 Visa gift card with each unit. Get a $500 Visa gift card when you buy select new HVAC systems, or get a $500 Visa gift card with the purchase of any new whole home generator. Now, these purchases all have great financing options with very low monthly payments. That's right. These deals are only available until the end of the year, so schedule today at happyhiller.com.
Now, Diana wrote, it's not happening about the trade. So now Ben Volin responded to that report and said, yeah, now the Titans are trying to drive the price up. So you can interpret this a lot of different ways. But I will tell you that, and again, the Rand stuff, see, if this is coming from the Patriots, do the Patriots really know what they're talking about with the league and Rand and all this stuff? I'm dubious of that aspect of it. I don't know the Vrabel-Rand daily relationship, or if Vrabel's happy with that. Maybe he isn't. I mean, I'm not dismissing that as a possibility. I'm just saying the part about the Bedard report that I'm confident in is that the Patriots are pushing this.
There you go. That was that was Joe on Monday talking about, again, we got 3 reports. We got this report, this report, this report, again, and what's it mean, who's it coming from, and all of that, which is turned into a fun little game to replace what usually used to be talks of, well, what do we think are the big keys to beating Indianapolis? Because it just doesn't matter. Even if you beat Indianapolis on Sunday, it doesn't matter. You're not going to make the playoffs this year. You have no chance of making the playoffs this year. The New York Times playoff machine gives you a 1% chance of making the playoffs this year. So you're not going to make the playoffs this year. So, this is what we're stuck with. Zach texts into the text line. Zach from Nashville says, Bedard reported that Vrabel wants out. Vrabel is using Diana Rossini to up the trade value for the Titans with the Patriots by saying it's not happening. That way, the Patriots will make a better trade offer. Thus, he is trying to facilitate a trade to get out. Now, the only part of this that he brings up that doesn't fall in line with reality or is wrong is that, again, Diana Rossini cannot write the story she wrote if Mike Vrabel is the source. She can't do it. Now, if the story she wrote was Mike Vrabel is not interested in going to the Patriots, she can write that with Vrabel as the source. She can't write it of he's not going to be fired, they're not going to trade him. That has to come from ownership. Now, I do wonder if the Titans, and again, I've never seen the Titans do this, but I've also never seen the Titans trade a coach before. But I do wonder if the Titans sat there and said, okay, who can we give this to that will report this, and maybe people will assume that it didn't just come directly from ownership. And maybe they thought Diana. Maybe they thought that by Diana putting that out there that we would all assume that it came from Vrabel, except for, again, it can't come from Vrabel. And Joe, who works for the same company and is a colleague of Diana's, has pointed out that this can't come from Vrabel. But I do wonder if Vrabel has gone, if Greg Bedard's right, Vrabel wants out, and Vrabel's gone to Amy and said, look, I don't want to work with this guy anymore. I don't believe in him. I just think this is bullcrap. I'm just not interested. I'd like to go to the Patriots. And I do think the Patriots want Vrabel. If the Patriots were just going to hire Gerard Mayo, I think that, they wouldn't be doing all the dancing with their own media. Then I think at that point, you come up with a strategy of, okay, how do we do this and get a maximum return? And I certainly think there might be something to that. But Vrabel could be in on it, which would then make some sense that Diana's a part of this. But Vrabel can't be the source of this. Ownership has to be the source. It can't just be, Vrabel told Diana and Diana wrote this. Because as Joe has pointed out, that would not fly with the New York Times, who Diana and Joe both work for. 615-737-1025 here on the program. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, the funniest moment I've heard in a long time on Robbie and Joe. We actually talked about it earlier today. Robbie and Rexroad, excuse me. We even actually talked about it today at the very beginning of Jared versus Joe. We will get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, Smashville Live with Ryan O'Reilly and Tyson Berry coming up next from Brew House South in Cool Springs. Max and Hal will have you covered at the top of the hour. I've also got a Preds thought here leading into that program. They've won 6 in a row. They go for 7 against John Hines and Minnesota tomorrow night. So Zach texts in, Zach from Nashville, texts into the text line, and this was at 8:42. Zach from Nashville texts into Robbie and Rexroad. Really nice of PK to write Stillman's show for him later today. Stilly is already giddy on Twitter about PK's comments. Ian, would you like to read the 2 o'clock segment from the Grid?
The 2 o'clock segment, yes. Paul Kuharski was letting it fly today.
Okay, what about the 2:15 segment?
2:15. Okay, how about the nugget from Paul when he basically said Greg Bedard wasn't making up the Rand Carthon stuff?
Am I that predictable?
No, I don't think so.
So here's what's so funny is I years ago I was talking to somebody that was programming ESPN Radio back when ESPN Radio was good, and we were talking about Mike and Mike. And they said that they would do all these research surveys and things like that, and that, the thing that people loved about Mike and Mike was its predictability. But people also, when it came to Mike and Mike, or when it came to what they wanted from the radio, was unpredictability. And it's like, wait a minute, what? Predictability, unpredictability, like, what are we talking about? And what I realized is that people want to know what they're getting, but they don't want to know exactly what it's going to be. Does that make any sense? So people want to know, okay, you listen to the show, we're going to talk about the Titans, the Predators, college football, like that's what it's, that when you tune on, like we're not going to be talking about Shohei Ohtani and the NBA play-in tournament or in-season tournament or whatever that bull crap is. We're not going to be talking about that, and we're not. So you like that. But then you're going to want to know, what's he going to say? Which I do think is kind of funny. But Zach did nail that one. Speaking of Kuharski on Robbie and Rex Road today, Robbie read off a text into the text line about Will Levis as a question for Paul.
I mean, it was a lot better from pressure perspective. So, there's some encouragement there with Jalen Duncan being a part of that. He's very good at self-assessment, and so talked about not being accurate enough on the downfield shots, which is where you're really counting on him. And I think the accuracy questions that a lot of us had with him coming into the league, starting to show themselves a little bit, to show themselves a little bit. So, you'd like to see some more polish there, and that's something that over the course of the next the rest of the remaining games, you'd like to see improvement there, particularly when he has more frequent clean pockets. If you guys can compose yourselves and act as professionals, Rex Road would like you to participate in the remainder of the show. There's approximately 10 minutes left. I misspoke, and I made a joke about it, which we do in this profession sometimes, and then we carry on.
This is going to be tough. Rexroad has no
let's just leave it silent. Everyone totally get on the camera and watch Rexroad not be professional.
I mean,
the best part is Kuharski trying to blame them for acting unprofessional. And
right.
For
it's because in our industry it happens sometimes, and I already kind of made a note about that. And Rexroad, if you'd like to compose on Robbie and Rexroad, I listen to our station all the time. You guys know I'm addicted to sports radio. It hurts me on Mondays when I try not to listen because I don't want it to ruin, my opinion of the game. But I'm addicted to sports radio, especially the station. And so, but the Wednesdays, 8 o'clock, I got to listen to Kuharski when he's on. And I mean, I was at the gym. I had my headphones on. I laughed so hard that people at the gym were looking at me like, what's funny, dude? And I just, was just laughing. Paul said sharded on the air, and I wasn't ready for that. And I thought that was pretty funny. Now, tomorrow's program, 2 o'clock, will be live at Bridgestone Arena. John Hines and the Minnesota Wild will make an appearance. John Hines, the much-anticipated return since we know that he's been the coach for all of 3 days with Minnesota. If nothing crazy happens between now and then, and I can't predict what's going to happen, for all I know, they could fire the general manager again like they did yesterday. But if not, I will have a Preds guarantee tomorrow at 2 o'clock, which I'm very excited about. Speaking of the Preds, Max, Hal, Ryan O'Reilly, Tyson Berry, Brewhouse South in Cool Springs, Smashville Live is next. Stillman and